Again, there's going to be a tour of the middle school with Mr. Payne. Maps will be provided. So
We have
it's right
maps?
on here.
Yep.
Awesome. So Mike Cutler's actually gonna film for us so it can be replayed.
Good.
So we're all gonna follow Tim.
So I do.
If there are maps, there are points of conversation, sorry, at the end of that table. I just don't want to make the assumption that everybody has been in the building and everybody has traveled throughout the building, so we'll do a little orientation.
If I don't have a map, will you drop breadcrumbs?
You might need it.
Well, we will absolutely go look for you. So, if you're looking at, you should have a map, if you do have a map. You want to, as you're looking at it, from what we are right here looking at the library. So if everybody turns and faces the library, your map should be sitting like this. And you'll see a library right there at the top of it, correct? Does everybody see that?
Yep.
All right. So we are going to make a left, and we're going to be heading down into the orange hallway, which is where the 6th graders currently attend. So we're going to be going in. Ooh, we're going to go down, going down this way. Okay. On your map, it actually will say project room at the end wing there, and then two
Gotcha.
notes of opens.
You gonna do the write-in?
Yeah, well, they told me.
It is currently 6th grade wing, and currently it houses 3 teams. In the 6th grade, what that means is you have a 2-person team. You have one teacher who teaches English and social studies, one teacher who teaches math and science. Currently, this year, it is a little bit of a wrinkle because this year's 6th grade class is historically bigger than it has been in the past. It's about 145 students. It has been running about 125. So this year, it's going to, as we explain the hallway, it's going to sound a little different than what it was because there is one team that has 3 teachers on it instead of 2. Okay, but right here is a classic example. On the left is Mrs. Kuhn's class. She is language arts and social studies. And next to her is her partner, Ms. Shaughnessy, math and science. This is Unkai. So you have roughly 50 students split between the two of them, about 40 to 50 students split between the 2 of them. Okay. Across the hallway, hey.
There's Miss Shaughnessy.
And then across the wing, what you have is Mr. McCarthy, who is English. You have Ms. Hunter, who is science. And then their partner on the 3-person team is Miss Albertson, and that is Aurora team. But traditionally, what this would be is another 2-person team. This would be another team's space. Okay? So then you walk down a little bit farther. I've already lost people.
You lost me when you said 3. I'm going, now I'm lost.
So, well, because I'm going to show you a 6th grade wing, and then I'm going to show you a 7-8 wing, and there's a little differentiation. So when you walk in this space, you should be thinking of teachers in 2s. Okay, we're going to go into a 7 and 8, and you're going to think of them as 4s. I just don't want to confuse folks. And like I said, this year is a bit of a blip. You have a larger than normal 6th grade living here. So instead of a team being Team Aurora just being in those 2 spaces, they actually occupy 3 spaces. But you come farther down, and here's another 2-person team. This is Team Cirrus. On the left is Mrs. Santa Cruz. She is math and science. On the right is Mr. McGuire, language arts and social studies. Okay, because the crew is slightly bigger this year, these rooms don't have traditional pairings. It's not an English and social studies person on one wing and a science and a math person. What it is Mrs. Albertson teaches science, and next to her is a special education teacher, Miss Milani. Okay, and that normally, if you had enough kids here for a 6th grade school, you would have, again, you'd have English and math sitting right next to each other in another pairing. But for the purposes of this year, and we have these 3-person. Next year,
Is the special ed teacher assigned to a team?
yes, they do. it's not as clean as in the 7 and 8 where you have a special education teacher for every team. There are 3 teams in the 6th grade, but there are only 2 special education teachers.
But the teams are smaller.
Yes, so they somewhat split the responsibilities. So, next year, what I anticipate with 125, they're projecting 125 6th graders is Unkai will be 2 folks, Sirius will be 2 folks, and Aurora will be 2 folks, and so you would have these spaces available. It is, like I said, a special education teacher. The other teacher for this year is using what was originally designed as a project room. This would be a common space available to the whole wing, and you'd be more than welcome to take a look at it. But places where you could have projects in progress, leave them set up, and not have to be constantly tearing things down and moving them around. But you can be glad to take a space, take a look at the space.
I'll tell you, they've changed it a few times, and it's not as easy to remember them. What do they need? What do they need?
Yes. This is a big space. This is used as a special education classroom this year, but it's a big space. Gets lots of sunshine. It's
Nice
it's a
view.
very nice room.
This room has been many things over the years. Originally, it was designed as a project room, and it was one of the alternative classrooms for a couple of years. And then it's been something else, and now is it being used this year?
Yep. So this is the 2nd special education classroom. This is Miss Fitzgerald's classroom. So you have two special education teachers. As far as space, when folks talk about, all right, how would we utilize it for classroom, there is a note on your list. This hallway could take another 40 to 50 students. You could, Miss Milani's space and Miss Albertson's space, you could very well make that a 2-person team again and accommodate 40 to 50 6th graders or 40 to 50 students with that. The challenge, of course, is where would you put your special education teachers? They still have classroom space to work in small groups and provide services for kids. And as you can see, this is one space not originally designed for a classroom. So we'd have to figure out a way where to put the special education
So
teachers.
Tim, originally in the design plan, in the pods off to the side, there are small classrooms, windowless classrooms, mind
Yeah.
you, but the building was designed so that there were those places so that special ed teachers and title teachers could work one-on-one or in a small group. It doesn't look like this.
No.
When we talk about the day that may or may not ever come when all 6th graders come to the middle school, and Sean Marie, I'm thinking you may be or at least one person who can answer this. Are all 250 or whatever it is throughout all 5 sending districts, 250 kids in these 8 classrooms? Was that the idea, this wing?
Well, I don't think that was originally the plan. It was originally, the building had been designed so that you could add on. And also, the original plan was that 6th, 7th, 8th would be integrated. 6th grade would not be an island of its own like this is right now. So you would have teams of 6, 7, 8 in different wings of the building.
Originally, it was designed for 950 students. That was the original design of the building. So, and I'm not sure exactly how that configuration came to be, but when it was in the design process, that's how many that was the number we went with. You remember that?
900 or 950, there was always a question. but
Yeah, depending.
Still, 900 even is,
Right now, how many students do we have here?
About 575.
600-ish.
That includes the 6th grade?
Yes.
It's a good thing the 6th grade are up here.
Well, the other thing that I'll point out, as we often do, is that when the building was designed, we didn't have language 5 days a week. Gym, I know it sounds kind of silly, but gym was not a requirement to pass to move to the high school. We didn't have some of the alternative programs that are now housed in the building, Ideals, the Deaf Ed program. So I think things, they find room. but it wasn't, originally those things weren't planned for here, so.
I'll make sure I show those spaces too. So, we don't want to get too warm and comfortable in here and have folks take a jog outside, wake everybody up a little bit. So, Sean Marie had mentioned, the sixth graders really, I mean, this is their community. I mean, this is where, you know, they have their own recess, they have their own lunch period. When they travel to specials, when they go out into do the library or do art or do music, they walk with the teacher. And that is the practice that I found as I started here at the building. And I think part of that goes to, you know, transition into the building, making sure they understand the building.
So can you
just
explain that? So typically in an elementary grade, students are walked to their specials, which would be art, music. In the middle school model, they are on their own to go from classroom A to classroom B. And so
Seventh and eighth
it's
graders
not-
travel freely throughout the building, following their schedule, and there's no teacher escorting them to their next assignment.
Tim, those are unused lockers and they put that plastic on so people don't store junk in there?
Yeah, because they'll sublet. Absolutely will.
Spread
So,
out.
Yeah, so we're down kind of at a, you know, it's a little more, the kids, a little more population loaded toward the front of the hallway. But yeah,
So
it's
we're
like
gonna go
anything
to-
else, open space, there'll
We're
be.
gonna go to the 7th and 8th grade on this level or?
Yeah, so we can do that. I think it was originally a computer lab.
Right, so we had 3 computer labs,
Yep.
2 here back to back and this one, and this is now a fitness room. Or, Dave, can you correct me, is that not a fitness room?
That would be okay, acceptable.
Okay. I need to be corrected, it's
There-
not gym, it's
Yeah.
physical education.
Yeah, and the computer labs at this point are a small cluster of computers in the library. There is a small cluster of computers over by the applied tech classrooms. Because kids have the one-on-one initiative, you have kids carrying netbooks, so there's not the necessity of having a computer lab, a dedicated one at least.
So the 3 rooms that were tech rooms are now used as what? I mean, the.
So you have fitness room, this is a special education space, this is modified classroom with Barb Marino. And then the next space maintains computers. It's where tech guys work out of. Yep.
Kids go in there themselves, or is it a gym class?
That's a
or-
teacher.
That's a
No,
teacher.
no, I'm just wondering.
No, they're supervised. I mean,
They go
Mr.
in there
Johnson
free
and Ms.
time?
Galley will move back and forth
The gym
between.
teachers.
Yep. Yeah.
Physical education teachers. Now, a lot of these pieces in here are begged, borrowed, and stolen.
Yes.
Part of
That's
one-
quite commendable.
Yeah, I mean, between grants and both Mr. Johnson and previous teachers asking for donations. So, and it gets used all day long. I mean, there's constantly kids in there. What you're looking at right here is an example of what a 7th or 8th grade team would look like. Not 2 teachers anymore, you have 4 teachers in a core. Teams get larger too, though. You're talking about a team that's close to 100 kids. So, but a math teacher, a science lab, or a science teacher, I should say, not specifically a science lab, social studies, and then an English teacher. And then, of course, each team has a special education teacher assigned to them. This is Mrs. Wilson's classroom. And the question was about a space without windows. This would be the one.
That's good size.
It is. It is.
There's one on each team, so there's one on the next wing at the end here as well.
Each team in the 7th and 8th grade has an assigned special education teacher with them. So it's in effect a 5-person team. And each one of those teachers has their a classroom space. Some look like this, some of them, you know, are rooms on the outside with windows, but that's for every space.
And the science labs are bigger. I mean, they were designed bigger and they look bigger and they are bigger.
Yeah, we can actually step in. Just take a look.
Now, those little side classrooms down at the 6th grade, they're not as big as those.
No,
No.
no, no.
They're like half that size. We just said that.
So a science room, you have the tables, you know, with special cabinet tops on them, sinks, a bigger space. Slightly bigger space. Right?
I just want to congratulate you for continuing the high quality of cleanliness in the building. Looks like it just opened up in September still.
Yeah, I will
beautiful.
absolutely, a custodial crew that does an amazing job keeping it clean.
I think the teachers, administrators, everybody working on the same idea, no scratching, no marking up, it really looks beautiful.
Yeah. Just a couple of thoughts too is, you know, the question Jean Marie, you know, originally asked, you know, Tim, 5th grade, 6th grade, what would that mean? A couple of things. So what I hope by looking at the map, you know, there's a little bit of chicken scratch on there, but as folks are looking at first floor, again, this one right here, you're just looking at my handwriting, CL, AT, that goes to a computer lab and applied tech classrooms. We didn't go down into that wing. WW is water wheel. The S and the V is Somerset and Vista, or Somerset and Cascade, that's a C. Just to give folks, oh, that's right, that's what we looked at, we saw that. Upstairs, the wings that we didn't look at were foreign language, the AMPS program, reading, language arts. So you just get a sense of the layout of the building. Additional students coming in from, let's say 5th grade. To think about that as a building, about where would you put them? Would you continue the practice of keeping them separated? And you know, what would that look like? Where would you place them in the building? Obviously, there's only one small wing right now where the 6th grade sits. You know, you'd have to think about integrating them into the building as a plus. The 6th grade wing has, like I said, probably 40 or 50 students space. If you were creative, you could grow that. The other thing is common areas, which sometimes folks don't remember. The gymnasium, the library, the cafeteria. Additional 6th graders, you're looking at about 40 to 50 kids coming. Maybe 60, I think, Jean Marie, when we looked at the math originally for that. 5th grade would be more of 125 students. And so you have to think about, okay, when would they eat lunch? Would they eat lunch with other kids? Would they have a separate lunch? Recess? The gymnasium is pretty busy now with 7 periods. You would be putting more kids through it. Gym right now is 2 days a week for kids. And then you have library space. Kids use the library in the 6th grade. It's one of their unified classes that they have, so you've got to think about, you know, kids going through that, using it as a classroom, but then also being open for a resource for 7th and 8th graders to go in and check out books and work with the library on various projects. So classroom space, but also have folks think about common space and just having more kids go through that. That goes along with supervision too. I have 2 gymnasium teachers right now. I have 1 librarian. I have 2 art teachers. I have 2.5 language people. So if you brought more people in, you would have to, of course, go back and look at that and say, how do we make sure that we continue to offer electives and unified classes for kids too? So that would
Well, I
just
do
be
think this is a beginning, if this was to continue the conversation. Part of the conversation many years ago was, does a 6th grader really need, quote, library like they do in the elementary school? Or
Yeah.
are they more of a middle school age student and they use it more as a resource, as you say, the 7th and 8th grade? So I'm not saying there's not one size fits all, but there are all of those things that you bring up were discussed years ago about how we were gonna map out the building. And as Dave had asked earlier, the transition to have the Bennington 6th grade here was originally because they had asked, I mean, we're talking a long time ago, 10, 12 years ago, they didn't have the space and they wanted them to come up here. But ideally, the building was built with the middle school model from when it went from a junior high to the middle school model. And it was really a transition to get the 6th grade in that would make everybody feel comfortable. And then it was, you know, we were going to take a look at it. So certainly this is just a starting point, and I wanted to make sure when I'd asked him to take a look at this, is that we, as a board, a year ago, had said, well, let's see what people think in the outlying districts, and clearly we got that answer that people were really not interested in 6th grade, so we were gonna take a look at what we might use the space for. Now, the 5th grade has come up from Bennington, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other options that we can look at in terms of integrating 6th grade, or certainly, you know, keeping the idea open if people are interested in coming. You know, things change. So, but thank you.
Sure. I just hope everybody gets a sense that the building is beautiful. The building has really been built around giving teachers access to each other and cooperation and teaming. Having served in a building that was built 50 years ago and trying to shoehorn a middle school into it, you know, it's really an amazing difference. So just some things to consider, and if folks have any questions, by all means, feel free to ask me or ask through the chair, and I'll be trying to
So
give as
do you
much
want to go back
information.
into the library, Kim?
Sure. Well, then,
I mean, anyone is welcome to come through here at any time and see what is happening upstairs. They're not as much of core academic pods, so to speak. They're more literacy and language, so there are, is it the blue hallway upstairs that's
Yes.
mostly?
Another interesting thing is just to go down and take a look at where the shops and things are. What do we call that hall?
Yeah, we're
Tech.
applied tech.
Applied Tech is done. That's an
Family
interesting.
consumer sciences.
Yeah, that's an interesting ring. And also, if anybody is interested in it, it's great to take a look at the wood-burning furnace they have in here too. That's
At the what?
Wood burning stove.
at the wood-burning stove. It's an impressive.
And still looks brand new.
It's still, you know, Darlene and the rest of them do a great job putting this place in, as Ken said, in magnificent shape.
And in fact, are those, the applied tech, there was one room that was actually used as storage. Is it still used as storage?
It is used for storage this year because the position was eliminated last year. It was a .5 applied tech. So there still is a applied tech classroom, and the other one is currently holding chairs and furniture. And although I have made it very clear that I will be taking it back as classroom space.
And the family consumer science room, are teachers using that now?
They are, but it's not in any kind. It's not anyone's assignment per se to run the kitchen during the day.
Great.
do you remember offhand which room we were?
Going to move on to the middle school configuration discussion. So, but I think we're waiting on Tim.
Mike, or Al, are you on? Great.
I think we have to wait for Tim for that. So Sue, would you like to talk about the financial literacy piece for a few minutes?
Yes. We've had 2 meetings so far, and we are looking at the possibility of doing a financial literacy / civics class that would be, we're still deciding. It sounds like the best way to do it might be through a short block, 9 weeks of one, 9 weeks of another, and the kids rotate through, kind of like we did a computer relay class a few years ago. We have contacted schools that are doing these types of courses. I know the one that's close in size is Missisquoi. We've gotten their information. We are now discussing what would be in the curriculum. And what we'd like to do is pilot it next spring with about 20 to 25 kids, just to, you know, if we can get to that point. Because one of the challenges is right now we're already doing schedules for next year. So we're going to have to be able to get kids into that class. So we're trying to figure all that out right now. We've only had 2 meetings. There is a lot of interest within a group of teachers, and you know, that's the main challenge is the scheduling, is getting it to fit into the schedule. And if you don't put them back to back, what do you put? Like, for instance, we have health, and next to health is PE, so you'd go health and then PE. So we'd have to have them back to back, or we'd have to have them with something attached to it, so a kid doesn't have 9 weeks with nothing in the schedule. So that's scheduling challenges that we're working on more than, I think the interest is there. I think there's a lot of information. I know one of the teachers, Judy Estes, who would be teaching the financial literacy part, went to Champlain College, a course that was offered last summer, and she said it was one of the best courses she's ever taken, so we have a lot of information. And it's more getting it so it works because the goal is to have every student take it before they leave the high school. And that's the challenge, to make sure every student takes it, to make it fit into the schedule so 1,000 kids can take it. We talked about that we'd like to see it in the junior and senior year, because we think the kids are a bit more mature then, and they'll have more information and take it more seriously. So that's about all we've done so far. We're continuing to meet. The thing that I had asked to be on here, though, is, can I do that part?
Sure.
Griffin? You're in charge, you can say no.
Sure.
You have to see me tomorrow.
Just try it.
So there are 4 additional classes that are taught at the CDC that we think would be, we would be able to use them as a technology credit, which is a credit that is a required credit. I've got them here. I've got it listed, what the justification is, and I just wanted an okay from the board to be able to use these 4 courses
Right.
as the required technology
Yes.
credit.
What are
These
the 4
only
courses?
sir?
No, they're all ones that are taught at the CDC,
Right.
but we think that they do fit into, given our kids have a required technology credit, half credit they
Yeah,
have to get,
right.
and we think that these are okay courses to get a to meet that requirement.
Would they still be taught by the CDC?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
It would just be another choice for a student to
Right,
take.
well, we're not in open session. How do you want to handle that? I mean, in terms of, can we vote? Yeah, but we can't vote.
Well, we just recommend.
We can recommend to the full board.
Right.
So I would make a whatever, to recommend to the full board that we approve this request by the principal that would allow credit for the courses offered by the CDC in the business, in tech, half-credit tech courses. Not phrased very well, but I'll get it better when we do it in the
When we
board.
do it in
Do
open
you have the list
session.
of tech courses?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll second that.
Is this to meet new state requirements?
No, we've had a requirement of a half-tech class for probably 5 years now, that every student has to get a half credit of tech before they leave between 9th and 12th grade.
Thank
These would be 4 more choices they could take to meet that requirement.
I can't get on this thing.
Do these courses currently exist at the CDC?
Say it again, what?
Do these courses currently exist?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Holbrook?
No more than, right, I mean, we would do what we
Regularly do,
Yep.
just before.
Yep.
All right, so Tim, would you like to discuss the configuration at the middle school? I know that was kind of discussed or went over a little bit on the tour, but
Generate lots of discussion.
We can do that. So we did take a tour, and folks will see that later on once it's edited. My purpose was to provide the group with the kind of an oversight of how the building is actually laid out. I didn't want to make the assumption that everybody is taking a walk through the space, and I invite folks in the future, if you have any questions and you want to do that, just give us a call. We'd be glad to accommodate that. Donna had asked for, and so did the chair, just kind of some quick thoughts about, what would 5th grade coming to the middle school look like. And I provided that list, and if folks don't have that list, I can make that available to them. I do think that the middle school's philosophy of, teaming teachers and using differentiated instruction would be a benefit for any student who came here. I think we have fantastic programs through art and music and the library and applied tech that I think would be great for any student to access. I also think the facilities are top-notch. That includes beyond classrooms, the library, cafeteria, performance spaces, garden, tech support. I think we do a nice job here, and so I think students who attend here would benefit from that. There would be some work to do if the 5th grade was to come to the middle school. Teachers, as far as bringing teachers into the building to teach 5th grade, this is a middle school, so looking for candidates that have an experience or an understanding of the middle school philosophy and the approach to teaching kids as a whole. Also, if I understand this correctly, historically there is precedent that when 6th grade came here, this being an MAU building and facility, actually had to post for positions and interview for candidates to come here. So that would also be a consideration if you were bringing 5th grade teachers to this space. The charter would have to be re-examined for the middle school so that it encompasses 5 through 8. I think that's a relatively straightforward thing. I think the tour and the map shows that the building is not laid out in a way that there would be dedicated wings for 5th grade and 6th grade and keeping them separate from 7th and 8th grade population. I think the vision for the building was that students would be mixing. That's definitely what you find in the 7th and 8th grade wings, where 7th and 8th grade teams live next to each other. There is space in the current 6th grade wing. I hear that in the community. I hear that from folks. We've got plenty of space up in the building. There is space in the 6th grade wing. I think it would accommodate somewhere between 40 and 50 students. Of course, then the challenge would be is where would you locate your special education teachers, and that would take some orientation of that, because it wouldn't just be 2 special education teachers in that wing anymore. It might be more, so that might be something that you'd have to consider. Expectations, I've heard from folks in the past that one of the kind of understandings of 6th grade coming here is that 6th graders would be somewhat isolated from the rest of the building, and that's been my observation of being in the building. 6th graders have their own recess, they have their own lunch, they live in one wing, and when they come out to go to unified courses, they are walked by their team teachers to different spaces. That doesn't happen in the 7th and 8th grade, so 5th graders, I would assume, would have to continue that practice. More students in the building, you would have to look beyond just regular core teachers teaching core subjects. You'd have to consider your library staffing, your gym staffing, your art, your music, your applied tech, all of which are programs that, as I've looked through the budget and gone through that process this year, have been pared down in the last couple of years. So you'd have to go back and look and see if you had enough staff to offer the programs. Without really getting into, I haven't done a whole lot of research, but I think it would also be interesting to look at the impact of common spaces within the building. Cafeteria right now, we have 3 lunches, and they are separated out by grade, 6, 7, and 8. To go to 4 lunches, the building has done 4 lunches in the past. Go back to that, what that would look like, and how that might impact your relationship with the Abbey group would be something that would have to be discussed. The gymnasium is busy throughout the day. Students take gym twice a week. There's plenty of literature, and Mr. Johnson could come back and talk to us about why it should be more. But of course, if you added more students to a building, you'd have to consider that, about how to get them through spaces like the gym, through rehearsal spaces, through the library, through art spaces and things like that. And then the last one on the list, and it's there on purpose, is that I would imagine there would be some contractual language that would have to be addressed, as 5th grade teachers are currently serving under a BSD contract and not an MAU contract, so there would have to be some researching to make sure what that would take, because all teachers currently right now work in this building under an MAU contract. So just some things to think about. And like I said, I pose them as challenges. I think there would be things that have to be addressed to make the move when folks would consider that kind of a decision.
When the building was originally designed, it was designed to have 3 art rooms, correct? So designed to have 3 art rooms?
I think so, yep.
So that could potentially, if we had one of the BSD art teachers come over, that could
Yep.
alleviate some of that pressure. I know that last year, I think Jeff ran a program, early morning exercise. It was before school. Could that be a solution to alleviate some of the gym pressure too? I know that with busing that would be difficult, but could that be?
Sure. I mean, I think there are creative ways to use the gym space. Like I said, I mean, on a personal note, I think 2 days of gym is a minimum, especially if after, you know, living with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders for the last 6 months. I think a lot of kids would benefit from more gym, but I'm also realistic. We have 1 gym space and 2 teachers, and it is what it is. But as far as requirements or, you know, graduation requirements, we don't have that like a high school would. But I do think for best practice, you would want to at least be a gym available to people. That was noted in an earlier conversation that, you know, well, in the past, gym wasn't necessary. I'm not sure I'm ready to go down that road because I think there's plenty of research that shows that kids need some activity on a daily basis.
I've heard some of the issues that have been stated about the 5th grade coming here. One of the concerns when I read your comment sheet, basically talked about changing the charter. And I was wondering why they weren't more thinking about changing the charter so actually 5th grade kids could go to anywhere in the district, and maybe that would enhance the ability of the other districts to allow the 6th grade to come here from their school. Basically, one of the big driving points where people were saying no is cost, but if their school was growing by having other 5th graders, they would then be able to send their 6th graders here, which would alleviate a lot of the things you're talking about with the 5th grade here. And at the same time, those schools are already handling 5th grades. So I think it makes more practical sense to try to look at a way to do some of the things that we've been trying to do for years, which is get more 6th graders here from the other schools, and at the same time, help out where there's a school space problem at this time, because that might change over time. But as we know, the outlying districts at the moment have space in their schools, and they could take the 5th graders. To me, that makes more sense that we should explore that and see what that might mean in the way of cost savings and other things.
I think MAU is you know, one of those options for addressing, like you said, a bump in student population at the elementary level, and what could you do with that? I think, like I said, I think it's an option. And so in making the list, it would just be a list of things that, like I said, I think the charter as I read it right now says it's a 6 to 8 building. It's rather narrow in its focus. In order to open that up as an option, it may not be that big of a deal. I mean, this board could sit and say, we want to go back and look at the charter.
Well, the charter I'm talking about is the charter that basically doesn't allow the districts to send their kids to other schools that are in the lower grades, the pre-K through 6.
Yeah.
Now, the 6th grade they can, but they can't with some of the others, like Bennington couldn't send the panel because the charter for their district doesn't allow them to do that. And what I'm saying is if they change those charters, you're now looking at where the state is pushing very strong for pre-K, and what you're going to see is pre-K through 5th in these outlying schools, which is going to increase their population, but at the same time, it will allow their 6th grades to come here if we let those children also attend other schools. And I'm not just saying that Bennington should go to Pownell. Maybe some Pownell kids want to go to Bennington. That the real thing is we should open that up a little bit. We're busting them around anyway. I just think it makes sense to look at those charters that way and look at the real cost that's outlaid. And maybe we'll find that we can actually save money.
I think that's an issue though that has to be brought up in an SVSU meeting or at a BSC or a Pownell or any of these.
But when we're talking about the MAU except in 5th grade, I think we should have that in our mind that we look at that.
So, Tim, maybe this is too pointed of a question, but would you recommend bringing 5th graders up here and the time you spent up here? Do you think that logistically it could work, that educationally it would be a good thing for those students?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
He's tough, isn't he?
Got right at it. Well, let me say this first, because I got asked a question about 6th grade when I went through the process of being a candidate for the position. And having been in the building now for a little over a half a year, What I would like to do is continue having the discussion about having sixth grade, having more of the experiences within the building, okay? Which it could be as basic as them following a schedule similar to what 7th and 8th grade looks like, to bigger questions like curriculum. I mean, what do they get offered for a unified? Can they have access to the applied tech spaces? Could there be a consumer science, you know, those kinds of things. Programs that have not been available to them to this point. I think that would be really good. Having said that, it's my hope that we spend next year working on those things that get in the way of sixth grade experiencing what 7th and 8th grade get to experience here. And so if I had my 3 wishes from the genie, I would like to settle the 6th grade question, and then I would gladly move on to the 5th grade. As far as that, I have, you know, concerns in that. I guess what I look at, I have a 6th grader of my own in the building now, and I know that last year as a 5th grader in one of the elementary schools, you know, pushing on the edge of needing to be in the middle school. But it was definitely one of those years where a 5th grade was a transition year. I look at the age span 6 through 8, and there's so much change going on. You know, my concern would be 5th graders. You got 5th graders in the building who are just really, really young. And I don't want to make this sound like scary 7th and 8th graders, but it's just it's a bigger age span as far as what's changing and what's going on in the building. It may be, you know, like I said, my experience was maybe 5th grade is better served in elementary. However, saying that, you know, if it was the decision of the community that 5th grades come to middle school, I think we would be able to find a solution for that and what that would look like. But what I would want is I would want the 5th grade here under a middle school umbrella, that it would be a middle school experience for them, not sitting in what a lot of people see as a traditional elementary school classroom, one teacher all day. I would want them experiencing all the programs here.
Okay. Well, I know that one of the concerns for the community when the 6th graders first came here wasn't exactly the school time, that parents were okay with them being intermingled during school time, that was structured time, but it was during, you know, waiting for the first bell to ring in the morning on the bus, in the cafeteria, that type of thing. So I think that with 5th graders, especially on the bus ride up, being there with 12th graders, I think that could be another source of pain. But if we're talking about logistically here, could a 5th grade, 6th grade kind of looping team model that we have kind of, or similar to what we have now going on with the 7th and 8th grade, could that potentially work? And so you have 5th grade, 6th grade, then 7th grade, 8th grade?
Yeah, I guess, you know, again, I think the overriding thing would have to be middle school philosophy around that as far as teaming. Because I don't know if everybody's aware, in the building, in 7th and 8th grade, there are, you know, 3 different models within which a kid can go through teams through the 7th and 8th grade. You have a very traditional, you go to one team in the 7th grade, you go to one team in the 8th grade. You got groups that travel with the same set of teachers, 7th grade to the 8th grade. And then you have Water Wheel, which, you know, carves it even more into a smaller group where you have a cohort of maybe 40 kids that you go to 7th grade with, and then the 8th grade, while at the same time they're teaching an older or a younger class. So, yeah, I mean, that could be a discussion, but I would still want it to be, I would like it to look consistent across the board as far as the building. I would be less in favor of that end of the building's an elementary school and that end of the building's a middle school. I have experience in a building where one end of the building was high school and one end of the building was middle school. But you share so many common resources, it just builds in sort of some tension and some resistance. That's my observation.
So you mentioned that you wanted to work out the 6th grade issues first. So what would you need from the board in order to do that, would you think? I know that monetarily the board is strapped, but what could the board do in terms of...
I don't see it so much as a financial. I think it's more of a discussion. I mean, you know, I'm a first-year principal. I'm getting to know staff and the building and needs. I think it's more of a discussion with, you know, current 6th grade teachers and talking about, all right, this is how we do it right now, but what would it look like if we did, like I said, basic things like how the bell rings and how many periods a day you have, and you know, how much time over the week you dedicate to math and English and social studies and science. So I don't think that's a monetary thing. I think it's more of a discussion with folks after they've had a year's experience with the principal to say, yeah, we see this as a way we could go forward for the 6th grade. And I think we have a good opportunity. You got Common Core coming, you got lots of new folks in the 6th grade teaching. So I think there's some opportunity to talk about doing things, you know, taking a look at how you're doing it and how we might change things going forward.
So does anyone else have anything to add?
Just a question, are there other examples in the state or out of the state where the 5th grade is part of a middle school, 5 through 8 system building?
When I was working in Massachusetts, Monument Mountain, which is South County, Berkshire, traditional high school 9 to 12, but their middle school was 5 to 8. Then to the outside of the building, never been to the inside of the building. So, so I can't speak to how they operate within the walls. If everybody's a middle schooler or if it's a split, elementary school. And Donna may be able to speak.
Yeah, it's a split, and it's kind of like an upstairs, downstairs. It's almost like like your rooms are kind of in quads. They're sort of around a center area, and that center space is sort of like their meeting space. It's their team common area. So downstairs is 5 and 6, and then upstairs is 7 and 8.
Okay.
So they do keep them in their separate integrated model. But it's more like a middle school model for the 5th and 6th graders as well.
That's one example that's not even in Vermont. There aren't a lot of examples, I gather, that we can look at.
Theirs was built that way, you know, you might want to,
Yeah.
if you're interested, go visit. I, certainly could set it up for you if you want.
Yeah.
What was the size of the school population-wise?
It's probably about, maybe a third of what we are here, not as big.
Yeah, the high school was somewhere between 550 and 600. I think it was about the same size as Mount Greylock, but I couldn't speak to how big the 5.8 was.
Yeah.
So does anyone else have any questions or comments?
I'm just wondering what the next step is for the board. I'm not sure where this is leading, and whether the board is going to be asked to act at all.
Yeah, that's a question I have too, and I wish Ken were here. But I think that's also a BSD question. I think the BSD was looking at just wondering if we were interested in taking the 5th graders. And it sounds like, at least for next year, that would be no. And so I think that's maybe a recommendation the Education Committee needs to make at the regular school board meeting, is that we would like to work on the logistical piece of the 6th graders first, and then discuss next year the possibility of the 5th graders.
Is that characterized?
I mean, that's my opinion. But the board, the chair has put it on the agenda for the whole board at 7 o'clock, and I see that I will be talking about I can speak again about the configuration of the middle school for folks. It's just my observations, but I think the chair is looking to be informed, so they can share some information with the BSD.
Right. So in terms of if we're asked to make a recommendation, is everyone in agreement about that recommendation? I don't think it needs to be official because there was never, I don't think, an official request made.
I don't know, personally, I don't feel that I'm ready to say no, but that's my own personal.
So what would it take to get, or I don't know if you need more time, but what would it take to get 5th graders up here for next year in terms of middle school facilities, generally?
There's not enough time. I don't think that's realistic, but, I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
couldn't even
March.
start to answer that question at this point.
And I think Nelson's correct that there are some charter things that would have to be looked at. There would have to be a vote. There,
Is it next year that BSD is looking to?
I believe so, yes. I think this was...
That's what's been in the paper. Anyways.
Next,
Yeah.
And I think that it was it's an issue for next year, but the following year, I think what is projected is that there really will be a shortage of classrooms in BSD. So it's growing in urgency.
I guess I just would want to send a message that we're completely opposed to the idea.
Well, I would say that because it sounds from Sue and from Tim that there isn't enough time logistically, legally, staff-wise to get everything together for next year. So we're supposed to set a next meeting date, so that can be discussed then, and that could we can kind of gather information. Tim can touch base on what Ken actually envisions, and then we can discuss that, and so we can postpone it for next year, but say that we're still following up with the idea.
Yeah, I think, answering some of the questions that I raised and some of the questions that's been raised by Tim, it's basically, there sounds like there's some solutions, but there's some problems and hurdles that has to be done before you can get there. And I, again, strongly feel that we should, as Mount Anthony Union, should look at the total school district and what it would mean impact-wise. I think that's where we really should be looking and making our decisions.
I think it might be interesting, too, to perhaps have the Chief Financial Officer give us some idea about what the movement of money was, or the requirements of money when the 6th grade moved here, and how that impacted the BSD budget, so we could sort of project, well, what kind of impacts might happen if you then moved the 5th grade here. So we have some idea of what would be involved there, more teachers or more expensive teachers or whatever.
So, I don't know, we can walk away from the discussion. I always feel like we should have a recommendation moving forward, whether that's just for further discussion or if we're going to say yes, no. But, I don't know, that would be my ideas. Because there's nothing else I don't think we can do at this point.
I would tend to agree with you that at this point, from what the information we've heard, is that it doesn't sound like it's doable by next year, simply between the hiring and all the processes go. But I think it does deserve further discussion. Mm-hmm. And if the board was to make any recommendation, I think that's the true answer, is that we don't see it in the near future, but that doesn't mean it's impossible.
Mm-hmm. And I also think that in terms of rearranging and adding the pre-K into all the outlying districts, that's a discussion needs to be brought up at an SVSU and an SVSU committee meeting. Then maybe that can be a recommendation too for Jean Marie.
Well, I think there are a couple of things too that maybe we could say for future discussion. We would like to know more about a few things, like maybe a visit to another school that has a similar model. And maybe to explore, like you said, what would the implications be if we were to accept tuition students to here or to other schools, like you said, kind of open up the choice option. And then a third thing is what Tim brought up about studying. What would it look like if he tried to integrate the 6th grade more fully into the model that's here? That's kind of a more realistic goal, to try to facilitate that within the building and with the staff that he has and the student population, so that, and that would kind of gradually build the model to maybe a place where you could accept some choice students of 6th graders. Maybe there are 6th graders who would want to come, and it would free up the building space somewhere else. Or in the future, maybe add another grade, or at least that option to some schools. But it's kind of a gradual process.
So, I'm not exactly sure what information the board would like to collect before our next meeting. So
I think one of them was the cost.
Cost.
I think that's, a definite thing that we need to find out. What's it mean for, continuing with the 6th grade level as we are, and we know there's some growth there, and what does it mean if we took the 5th grade, or what does it mean if it is spread out differently? I think some of those costs could be done. It lets us think, we're always concerned about the budget. One of the things is that we know hiring a few more teachers and some of the other stuff that's listed here are not necessarily all that inexpensive.
And even the space, I think, would have to be redesigned in some way to make it work for very many students.
Well, maybe
Renovation, yeah.
one of the things is we could dig up the original plans for the building, because I know that it was originally built for 950 students or 900 students, so we could see how that was originally designed, see how we would accommodate so many. Leon, is there anything policy-wise that you'd want to think of?
We definitely have to look at those things. I mean, as we start to bring in like even the sixth graders now, we look at them and treat them the same as the regular schools. I mean, the elementary schools in terms of policies and procedures. And so if we decide to integrate all of that, then those things will be looked up on and changed to be able to talk about a middle school grade level and to be separate from the BSD or the Powell North Bennington or Shasbury part of that. You mentioned the seventh grade piece in here, the design and so forth. Our hope was that we would get sixth graders in here and this become a sixth and seventh and eighth grade, not so much the fifth grade. And there's a lot of things that's got to be looked at in terms of, and I heard came in on the end and mentioned some things about the charter's got to be changed. You got to get a voting in. You got to look at how you're going to structure the building, where we got space, and where you're going to be taking kids from. So there's a whole host of things that administration will have to be going out and getting and come back with before we talk about bringing in the fifth grade here. And I agree with the fact that we need to be concentrating on making this a sixth, seventh, and eighth grade solid school as opposed to something else.
Okay. So, and do we want Tim to visit a school, or him or another teacher in the middle school or another administrator? Or would you like to visit a school? Do you think that would be helpful?
I don't mind. Between Donna and myself, I mean, I know the principal at Monument Mountain very well, so I have no doubt we can get an invitation and a tour. We could do that in the next month.
That's a question.
Yeah.
How interested is BSD in sending the fifth graders here? Don't I read that they're borrowing money to draw up plans to enlarge their building, etc.?
Well, I know that Ken says that the board is interested in. Was this as an alternative to build to the new addition, or is this in addition to?
I think that they were just exploring the option because they weren't fully informed about what would be possible if they wanted or needed to do that. And they're looking at adding on because they do not have enough space. So they were considering what would another option be, and let's just look at the middle school and find out the facts and see if that really would be a workable model.
So perhaps we need to have a discussion with Ken first to see if this would be something he'd be interested in, even if it weren't to happen next year, before we start digging up all of this work. So maybe we can, so when Ken and Jean-Marie and Tim return, we can have that discussion with them. Then make a recommendation to the board, but it sounds like we need to dig up the costs, different policies that would need to be changed in terms of, in the charter as well, building plans, and the Monument Mountain school visit. Is that to kind of summarize? Okay. So Tim just walked in, so I'll put you on the spot. You have an advisor position?
Yes. We have spring sports starting a week later this year, and since our basketball teams, we've known for a week or so that we weren't going to get a home basketball game. We've got quite a bit of gym availability and some kids bouncing off the wall wanting to do stuff after school. And we always have a dilemma where, you know, the kids come down and I'll say, if you can find a teacher that can supervise the gym after school, you can go ahead and play. And it's always a struggle finding somebody consistently. So having the whole month of March pretty much free and then continuing on with the open gym after, intramurals after school in April and May. I wanted to see if the board would approve having an advisor for an hour to an hour and a half after school that would just supervise the gym while the kids were playing. So, we presently have 2 people that are co-advisors of the weight room, which runs after school. So they share, one does Monday, Wednesday, Friday, one does Tuesday, Thursday. So they've agreed that one would do Monday through Friday of the weight room, and the other would do Monday through Friday of the open gym after school. So instead of giving them each a half stipend, I wanted to know if the board would approve giving them each a full stipend, with one to do the weight room and one to do the after-school open gyms.
So there's the interest, because I think is the policy currently you need to have 10 students to,
Sorry?
10 students for a club? Is that the current policy? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of that. Until the kids can, get outside with the spring sports and stuff, it's really busy. And it'll taper off after that, but we'll still give an opportunity for kids who, there's always kids that want to play basketball. Dave can attest to.
So, comments, questions?
So would there be a limit to the number of students who can access this activity, or?
Well, they can play, you could probably get up to 40 kids playing, because they can play cross court, and they do pick up games, and it could be co-ed, boys and girls both can play. So, and if they decide they want to play volleyball or dodgeball or whatever, they can, the advisor would be in charge of deciding what they're going to do that day.
You're comfortable with one advisor for 40 students?
Comment. This normally, and I'm trying to make sure I understand this, the reason we got space and availability right now is because of, with my understanding, we may not have playoff positions. And so therefore, the people that would normally be occupying the gym and responsible for students at that particular time is no longer going to be required to do anything.
No, they're still coaching, but they're not coaching home games. In other words, there's no games in the gym.
Right, and so it's just that's an hour and a half time period. Is that what you're talking about? That if we had a home game, we would have been, 2 hours? Well, between the JV and the varsity, I guess 3 hours or so forth along that line. And so they would still be, I thought they were going to be practicing myself. So I'm trying to figure out what are they going to be doing. It sounds like it's a great opportunity for them to be loading up the gym with prospects for the future during this time, as opposed and be able to harness some of the kids that may be available to play in the future if they don't have games scheduled. I would think that would be an alternative out there. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm looking at the opportunity to say, oh, Jesus, if Dave was the coach and now he's got some time, everybody ought to be in there just so that he can help, see things that I didn't get picked, or somebody I want to get picked, but I'm not there, but now I'm going to get in here and I'm going to be able to work out with an expert looking somewhere. Along that line. That's the way I'm looking at it. Maybe that's the wrong way.
I don't know if that's what we were thinking.
No,
though. I don't look at it as a recruiting thing. I think it's for kids to keep them busy and to keep them active
It also
and
provide,
to use the space at the same time.
and also students who wouldn't generally play sports, they could play.
Well,
Yeah.
right. I'm
Could be
agreeing.
anybody.
Agreeing that that's not that it's necessary to recruit, but I'm saying you got space, you got a persons that of interest that are not having a game to worry about, but then you got students that may be able to draw more of them in by their association than we would if we had somebody else, is what I was saying. That's the way I'm looking at it. Hey, it's,
And what are those people doing if they're not there? Normally you're saying they're there and now they're not?
I'm not sure your question.
The question is if there was games playing, it sounds like we got coaches there. If we don't have games playing here, what are they doing?
Well, they're practicing, but they've agreed to start their practices after this intramural period.
Okay.
Normally, they'd start their practices after school, 2:45, whatever. But they've agreed to wait till 3:30 to start their practices. And Right now, they're into a stage where they're in single elimination. If they lose a game, their season's over with, so.
The JV season is over for the boys.
Yeah, JV girls will be over with this Friday, so we're down to 2 teams. Like I say, so we've got a lot of open gym time, and we're gonna have a lot of kids bouncing off the walls, so it's a good opportunity.
But Tim, in another year, that intramural or whatever advisory position, they might not start for a long time.
Yeah, it could be a couple more weeks.
So would you look at that on an individual basis, or
Yeah.
come back another year and
Yeah.
say,
This is just for this year?
It's just for this year. And again, spring sports, it's the first time it's started. It's starting the 25th of March this year, whereas normally they started the 18th. So there was a smaller gap, so to try to organize something wasn't really worthwhile.
And so would this period run just during March, or would this run for the rest of the year?
It would run the rest of the year, but it would definitely be busier in March than it is, you know, once the spring teams are built. But there are always kids that want to play basketball, because they haven't had a lot of kids haven't had the opportunity to play basketball all winter, because the gym is booked solid from 2:30 until 9 o'clock at night with sports teams. So this is a chance for other kids who haven't had a chance to play basketball.
would it be appropriate to make a motion that we accept that, or?
We'd recommend it to the board.
At the whole board?
Thank you.
Yep.
Would somebody want to know what this is committee, but I'm going to want to know about the cost and whether Sue's going to cover that, or whatever I hear when we come out and say that.
No, that's a very good point.
So,
The cost is actually covered because we've got 5 clubs that didn't run this year, so the money was put in the budget for 5 clubs that aren't running, so this would replace half a club actually, because
So, yeah, that'll answer that. We got money, we aren't running some other clubs, we want to do that, and that'll make that go. I was just trying to make sure that we didn't overlook the fact that we can have some professionalism in that area to help draw that and encourage kids, as opposed to having someone that just normally do the weight room and the whatever. I mean, I don't know who they are, but that's what I was, you may want to think about that, but if you're saying you're set and you want to go another way, and everybody vote on it, it's fine with me.
Well, I guess it wouldn't hurt for the coaches to stop by. You think there's kids who never try out for the teams simply because they don't think they're good enough or so forth. A coach seeing someone that is, and by talking to them, makes a big difference. So it doesn't hurt doesn't say that they have to spend the 3 hours there, but it doesn't hurt when kids are playing like that for them to sort of be scouting. I think that's good, because you're going to attract some kids that you normally wouldn't. And, you get them interested in sports, and as we know, the sports teams usually change the grades of the students too, because they get more focused.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying that. Yeah.
Is there a need in the fall, before basketball season, to have a position like this to supervise the gym?
There could be, and it could, after we see how this works, if kids know that there might be something available. I know the middle school has been very successful with their programs right after school. The middle school doesn't have as many sports teams to offer. When you get to the high school, there tends to be more things for kids to do, but it certainly could lead to doing something in the fall. Another thing that is out there, which is on the horizon, is volleyball is making its way to Vermont, and it's going to be a trial season next year in Vermont. And it's in the fall, which again, that's when the gym is free. So that's a possibility. I might be coming to you, later with a proposal of starting a volleyball club, which would be the fall season.
So does anyone else have any questions? Dad?
Would there be any point in calling this group of people a club, or organizing it as a club to make?
I would just call it after school analysis. Because like I said, I'd like the advisor to have the flexibility of, either, like I say, playing volleyball or dodgeball or basketball, whatever the kids want to do.
Mm-hmm. Have you got candidates or all lined up?
Yes, Rick Crozier, who was a basketball player for you, and Bill Hay, who was our football coach, are presently the co-advisors for the weight room. And they'll probably get right in there and play with the kids.
So do we want to recommend that to the full board then, to hire or? Yes.
Yeah, I say we recommend it.
Sounds good.
Okay. So one of the things that I want to discuss, I guess not so much about the high school in general, but there was a bullying and harassment committee meeting last week, and it was the student leadership committee, and the idea that the council has is to run a leadership conference for next year, or we're hoping to get it off the ground for next year. But it would be for students to go to. There's similar conferences. I believe there's a student leadership sports conference. There's a Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership Conference. And it would be along the same lines as those conferences. It would be either 1 or 2 days. And it would just be different groups coming to talk with students from around the state, probably at a college of some sort. And one of the things that we wanted to bring to all of the different school boards and administrators across the state was what kind of student leadership skills the board and administrators would like to see, and that we could kind of try to instill more in terms of bullying than in terms of leadership in general. But that makes sense.
Are you asking us to give
yes.
input?
Question, yeah.
So I think having a wide range of kids from, diverse range of kids is important to have, not just getting one, just the scholars or just the athletes, or just having a wide range of kids is always important. I think having students that connect with a wide range of students also is important.
Because one of the things that was brought up in this meeting was how well Mount Anthony's district in general does with school-based clinicians, school psychologists, and really the crux of bullying is kind of the responsibility of that is put onto the adults, in a sense. And around the state, that's not always the case. Sometimes the students have to take more of an engaged role. And so they were just wondering what, Sue, Tim, what the board would like to see moving forward, what kind of engaged role they would like to see students take, what kind of skills they think would aid in that.
The more the better.
Well, I'll speak. First of all, we have a policy in place, and everyone needs to be aware of that particular policy, as that is the board policy in terms of what it contains and what are the guidelines involved in the violation of those. So this council is looking at how do we be proactive in the sense that we have this out here, and everybody is not really fully aware and understand the implications and the impact that they have on others along that line. And so the role of the students and the administration is to make sure that the groups get together and understand what it means to be bullying someone and the various types of things along that line out there and the scenarios that could come up, because we have a policy in place and it's clear cut and it needs to be followed. It's just only what we're trying to do is make sure everybody becomes sensitive to the things that are happening out here that's sweeping the nation along the line for people are not being considerate of others. And so that's what we're looking for, those kind of things, of groups to discuss, plays out scenarios or whatever you want to do along that line, but understand the implications and the impact that it has upon others and be able to recognize it. Because everybody don't recognize it because it's fun to them, but it's not fun to somebody else. And now those are the kind of things out there.
Just a consideration for, I would assume that these are mostly high school kids who would be attending the...
Yes, we were considering, at least for the pilot year, running just high school, and then potentially having a middle school and then a high school, 2 separate.
So, one thing, a willingness among candidates to attend and then go back to their district to, do a project. And, I would absolutely raise my hand and volunteer if someone said, okay, can we come and talk to groups of middle schoolers as older kids to say, you can talk about impact of bullying, you can talk about, as leaders, we try to set a tone at the high school and what we don't tolerate, what we expect. I think that would be great for middle schoolers, especially getting the sense of, oh, what I do in 8th grade is not acceptable in the high school. That's not cool. Older kids are going to call me on that. That'd be huge. So, a willingness to be able to do community outreach, or I've seen that before, where you can go to the conference, but you have to promise to do some kind of community outreach. That'd be great.
Yeah. One of the ideas that we had was the high schoolers would either go to the schools within their own district, and they would even potentially travel to other high schools and run seminars, so it becomes less personal in that whatever district where certain things may have happened. But the idea also behind educating middle schoolers, probably on a lesser scale, it wouldn't be a weekend or a couple of days, an overnight trip, but would be for them to be able to go down to the elementary schools, and so that trickle-down effect. So does anyone else have anything they would like to discuss? No. There's also the meeting. The next meeting is March 13th at noon. It's a Wednesday. So if any of you would like to attend, I video chat in via LMV at the high school. So if any of you would be interested in that, please speak with me.
Are you talking about the
afterwards.
next state meeting?
Yeah, the next council meeting, yes.
Okay, for bullying.
So, all right. So one last thing, and then there's pizza waiting.
Did we do new courses?
Yes. Yes, we did at the beginning. It
Just the finance, but are there other new courses on that sheet?
Yeah, there was the courses from the CDC. So I think we just need to approve the minutes from November 26th. I think that's it. So I don't know policy for that. Yeah.
I think you just make a
Motion.
motion.
All right. So would an official board member like to motion to accept the minutes from November 26th? Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor? I think it's unanimous then. Oh, abstain. So. Abstain. All right. And any other business? Yes.
I got one other, and I don't, Shawn Marie's not here, maybe she has it down for a future meeting, but the CDC has been trying to meet with the Education Committee to talk about the agriculture program that we got here at the middle school, how the high school, and where the community and the hospital and all that kind of stuff. So I don't see it here, and I don't know whether she's got it planned, but I did want to mention it, that it needs to be it needs to be talked about pretty soon, because we approved some money for the middle school, and we're talking about expanding things out here and teaching kids more in the classroom environment about certain things, and I didn't want it to get off too far without having to make the connection. And I know that they've asked Shawn Marie and Ken to get it, and I was surprised to see that it wasn't on here for that.
So, yeah, well, I think at the last finance meeting, the garden here was approved for the $14,000? $15,000 amount.
We need money
yes.
to do that for the middle school. I mean, that was the right thing to do, but then the leadership part of that, who would be the real leader in this area for the middle school, the high school, the community, and the hospital, any of those groups out there when it comes to that. And that should be, the leadership should come from the center, the CDC, and that's what they want to meet and talk about, how we can get everybody to come together and then be able to have a vision and what roles that each one need to be playing, and what funds and what the program should look like.
Okay. So maybe, because I know that Helen Fields currently is the pseudo leader of the garden. So maybe she needs to be a part of that discussion too. So maybe at the next education meeting we can have representation from the CDC. We can have Helen there. We can.
As long as Shawn Marie schedules it, not Shawn Marie, but.
Yeah, I will make sure it's on the next agenda.
Ken, to get it on the agenda.
So we should invite Jim Coquine and.
Well, they're waiting. They've already,
They've never
the chair of the
spoken.
board they've gotten them out. I mean, Shawn Marie, a dozen times, I mean, and I brought it up saying that we need to be talking, And when we talked about the $15,000, I said, we need to be talking, I mean, this is bigger than just the middle school. And they were aware of that, but we just hadn't got everybody together.
All right.
So that needs to happen.
Okay, so that will be for the next meeting. So I think the last order of business, and then we can eat, is setting the next meeting date. So possibly sometime in March, if people are free. I don't know when is the March MAU meeting.
What is it, the third Wednesday? Is it going back to Wednesday, I believe?
Yeah, I was kind of confused.
They're all on Wednesdays, but I think it is the third Wednesday.
So what's that date? Do you have?
It is
The 20th.
so.
If that's when the
so-
board meeting is.
So is that, would people be free for 5 or 5:15 board meeting here? Again, before the MAU meeting? Probably the same time frame because we'd be discussing agriculture and we'd also be discussing the middle school, depending on what we hear from Ken. Or is there any conflicts, any outstanding conflicts?
No, I don't have a conflict, but I have one other thing that should be on that too, and maybe we've had it. It's the grade advancement policy that we were supposed to take another look at between the middle school and the high school because that didn't get finalized. And I think it was given back to Dave and somebody else to bring back.
Yeah, I have it, but remember, I had done a thing up that we're based on credits.
All right, you got
So
all
it's
of it.
not, yeah, I think you have my stuff.
But we wanted to have Tim look at that particular part too, but it was
you get
supposed to
that?
come back
Show me some.
to the education committee
Okay.
to have everybody look at what that is, because when you ask the question of how kids are, advancing and accelerating in classes or being retained, the old policy is in place and the new one needs to take the place. But we wanted to have this committee take another final look at it and make sure it's understood.
Okay.
So if you don't mind adding that on
no,
the
not at all.
list for the agenda.
Sure. So I'll work with Sean Marie and we can track down those
And
policies.
Dave and Sue have been looking at that already.
We have it, yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so that will be on the next. Okay. So does March 20th at 5 o'clock here work for our next meeting? Okay. So I will, Jean Marie or I will send out an email when it gets closer to the date as a reminder, and just to double check to make sure everyone's still free. But so I think that does it for now.
Good job, Griffin.
Great.
Tough meeting.
Mike or Al, tell me. Good evening. This is the Mount Anthony Union School Board meeting for Monday, February 25th. We are live, but we are a few minutes late. I would like to review the agenda just briefly. I'm going to mix it up a little bit, but first I would like to, we have a new student rep with us in training tonight, so I'd like Griffin to introduce him. So I'm going to start, so you know who everybody is. We'll start at the end. Mike Cutler is from Cat TV, and then Dawson is the reporter, and then we have Richard. And Richard is our recorder. And then would you like to introduce yourself? Or Griffin, would you like to introduce him?
I think you know me.
No, would you like to introduce Nathaniel?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Nathaniel Durfee. He is a junior at the high school, and he's on many sports teams, and he's very academically minded, very gifted, so I think that he will fit in well here.
And he's in training?
Yes, he's in training.
Great.
So don't scare him away yet.
Okay. We'll be nice tonight. Dave?
Dave Frederickson.
Ken Sweat, Bennington.
Sean Marie Oler.
Donna Lee.
She's the assistant superintendent.
Nathan Wallace from North Bennington.
Nelson Brownell from Pownell.
Tim Holbrook.
David Durfee, and full disclosure, of his father.
Oh.
Tim Brown, activities director.
I hope. Sue McGuire, I hope you know me.
And Tim Payne.
Great. And that's Frank Barnes, and we have 2 teachers, which you'll be introduced to in a minute. So I understand, Tim, you did come to the Ed Committee to present the advisor. So would you like to go now? And if somebody from the previous committee would like to recommend it? Griffin, you were there?
Yes.
So
So Tim brought up the need or the want for an intramural director at the high school, or club advisor. There are currently 2 advisors paid half-time to run the weight room, and he wanted one of them to be paid to run an intramural, whatever the advisor sees fit, after school at the gym. So they would be split up. So it would be the creation of a new advisor position. He said that it would not, there was money in the budget because 5 clubs did not run. So in terms of budget, the money is there. And the education committee recommended it to the full board.
great. So is there a motion to accept this?
I make a motion, we accept the position.
Second.
Ken?
One question, is it gonna, I noticed it said starting March 1st?
Tim can answer that.
Yes, it's actually starting tomorrow. They would run it the first few days if it wasn't approved.
Is that gonna go right to the end of the school year, or is it
Yes.
gonna? Oh, it is,
Same with weight room.
all right.
And is it on our consent agenda?
No, because we didn't do a non-form. Until
Okay.
you okay that we can have the position.
Well, I was just thinking maybe wishful thinking. He had it
No.
already on here. I'm looking.
We're not that
So it'll
bad.
come next month. So are there any other questions of Tim? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. So now we're gonna, Tim, I didn't want you to have to, wait till maybe we got derailed in the beginning of the meeting, but, so it's been approved. So we're gonna go back up to public comment, and seeing none. Frank, you're not a public comment tonight, right? No. So, Sue?
So I'd like to introduce Katie Schoenbeck. She is the head of our math department, and you'll see very quickly what a wonderful teacher she is as she speaks to you. But before we do her presentation, I wanted to share something. She doesn't know about this, she's going. Katie,
cover my face,
Katie was recently, Katie recently earned National Board Certification, which is an advanced teaching credential. There are 136 in all of Vermont out of the 9,000 teachers. There's just 3 here in the SVSU. And it's a very rigorous, long process, 2 to 3 years. And there's an ongoing reflection. Your teaching is videoed. You have to take 6 tests.
30 minutes each, time.
Time tests. And she just recently received this honor. So we wanted to recognize her here tonight.
We do.
And please excuse the quick wrap job. It's better.
I had it in a paper bag, really.
I traded
thought
the
you'd
paper
like that
bag
better.
in for something that was in my car.
Now we're.
Wow. Wow.
You gotta
It has
open it.
weight. I'm sorry, I have to open this.
You want to try anymore?
It now works.
Very
Yeah,
exciting. This is like,
The guy must have fixed it over there.
do I get to keep the wrapping?
You could, just because I
Oh,
know.
wow. Oh, wow.
All of your board.
Oh.
It's like the Academy Awards
This
last
is
night.
so
You wanna make that?
Academy Award.
Speech.
Oh, I'd like to thank my mother. It says Katie Schoenbeck, National Board Certification for Professional Teaching Standards, November 16, 2012, with appreciation, Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union. Thank you all. Thank you, Mom.
All right, now back to.
All right, back to business. I feel like I should pull something out of this and.
So would you like to introduce what Katie's going to talk about? Or we'll let Katie do that?
Katie can do that.
We've been working on a number of, oh, I need to talk into the microphone. Got it. We've been working on a number of initiatives in the math department at the high school over the past couple of years, and I wanted to take a little bit of time this evening to bring you up to date on some of them. It's pretty exciting stuff. For example, we have built on the discussions that were begun at the beginning of the school year with various business community members. We had them right here in this building, and have started going on company tours. So the math department has gone on about one a month to various companies in the area. We visited Command, Abacus. Next month we're going to be going to NSK. Really interesting, amazing things that are made right here in Bennington. It's the wow factor is huge, especially for us who drive by these buildings every day and wonder what happens, you know, behind all of those cinder blocks. So that's been really interesting for us as teachers, and we have started to take some of the things that we've been seeing on these tours and incorporating them in what's happening in the day-to-day experience of our students. So for example, we looked at the rubrics that Command uses to help individual teams improve whatever they're interested in making better or doing a better job at, and started looking at the rubrics that we use at the high school when we're looking at teamwork. And so how can we look at how do we help our students do better at working with each other towards some common goal. So just sort of interesting things like that. We've also decided that there are such amazing things that are happening out here in a walk from our high school that we ought to start bringing some of our students to see what's happening out in the business world. So we're going to be taking some of our classes on tours of various businesses. So my geometry class will probably be visiting Abacus in a month or so, and we'll let you know how all that goes. So that's very exciting. We've been working pretty closely with Peter Oderna from the BCIC group. Let's see, where am I? My big list. Okay. We started a program last year to work with students after school to help them get some extra help in math. It's called Aftermath. Very funny. Aftermath, I won't get it. It's pretty funny. What we were finding is that some students were coming to get extra help after school with their teachers, but there wasn't enough. And we're trying to figure out, well, how do we get more students to get more help with math more often? Why don't we go to where the students are if they're not coming to us, and where many of the students hang out after school is in the library. So we started setting up a couple of teachers, little spaces in the library, and then pulling kids in as we saw them working on their homework. This little sort of one-on-one thing quickly became an amazing experience after school. So every single table in the library is filled after school with kids working on math homework, getting ready for tests, prepping for SATs, interested in some competition math. And students started saying, you know, this is really awesome for math, but couldn't we have like after science or after English? Like, what about that? So brought that back to the head teachers, who said, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. And now we have teachers helping with math, helping with English, helping with science, and we're going to try to snag some social studies people next. Interested? Come on. Okay. So that's been a really, really successful program, Aftermath. We are going to be piloting 2 new configurations of courses next year. So not new courses, but new configurations of courses. We've been looking at ways to help the kids that we have normally put in a B level rise up to the challenge of a college prep level, an A level class. And a lot of times what kids really need is just more time to learn that material. So it's not like they need to learn less or they need to learn like something else. They need more time and more support in learning that material. So we're going to take 2 classes. One will be a freshman algebra class and pair it with a freshman college prep science class. It will be taught for the full year, like a humanities, so every day. And hopefully that will be an opportunity for those students who struggle with learning math to have some application right away. Like, how does this algebra equation stuff fit in with science? Oh, well, those are formulas, and this is what that would mean. The other class that we're going to try piloting next year is a full year geometry class. So once again, same material as an A level, a college prep geometry class, but taught for a full year instead of squished into half a year.
It would take place during a short block time, which is interesting. When you look at a kid taking a short block geometry class that full year, they end up being in class about a quarter as much, like more, so 25% more than a kid sitting in a half-year short block class. I'm really excited about that because I think it's going to offer a lot of kids who kind of, they say, I can't deal with that, with the stress of having to learn so much in such a short amount of time, more time to process that. So I'm pretty excited about that piece. Going down my little list here, we've got that's. Oh, yes. So part of the reaching out to the business community has involved some attending of a group called the Bennington Economic Development Committee, and I hope that that's the right, there are a lot of people developing economics around here, which is awesome. But this particular group is really excited about some of the math initiatives, particularly Aftermath, and they have written us a letter of support around all of our initiatives and are interested in helping us develop a study to look at whether, particularly Aftermath, is helping raise the bar for kids, helping kids stay in math classes longer and take more challenging level classes. So,
how about Operation Math? Why don't you mention
Operation Math is still ongoing. That's been going on for, I don't know,
like
5, 6 years now. So Operation Math, for those that you don't know, is an opportunity for students to study math all year long. It's free. It's offered from grade 5 on up through senior year. Kids can sign up at any point. They get
It's in the
connected up with a
summer.
teacher. It's in the
Yep.
summer. But also kids can do it throughout the year too. So say you are interested in getting better at algebra, Sue, and you really need to study some more, but your mom doesn't want to hire a tutor and she can't figure out what you should do. You come and see me, and I set you up with an Operation Math account, and you can work online, or you can come to Aftermath and get some help. So that's an opportunity for kids to study math and get better at their math skills throughout the year. And there's more stuff too, but, you know, come on.
Mine's just great. Loving it.
We can be your fan club.
Yay! Yay! I'll share.
I actually was at a meeting that Katie was at with both, I think, I'm not sure, but there are many, many different community meetings around economic development, and they're very pleased to see the involvement of the school and Katie's math initiatives. In fact, they're looking at their strategic plan tonight at the Bennington Select Board, which has a couple education components in it. So, bravo.
Thank you. I mean, I think, and the bottom line, what we're trying to do with one thing and then, okay, thanks, is that as we're introducing Common Core standards, which you're going to be hearing more about, we really want to not only get kids excited about learning math and taking on those challenges, but give them the support that they need to do that. So it's, yes, get them motivated and interested and connect them with what's going on in the community and possible jobs and how this applies, but it also is about how to help them every day, get their math homework done every day, feel better prepared to take that test every day, feel like they're connected to a teacher. So both raising the bar and supporting their kids is what we're after. Thanks for waiting.
I just want to congratulate you. I think it's a great idea, your geometry that goes 45 minutes a day for the whole year.
It's actually going to go for 55 minutes.
Because I think if you see that really working and the kids are really picking up the material, maybe you can apply that to other math classes as well, you know, algebras or whatever, I think, because I was always one that thought that, you know, an hour and a half of math every day for half a year is just a little bit too much to digest, and I think the way you're proposing it probably will work much better.
Well, we're really excited about this and hope to expand it to other classes as well. We'd like to keep the flexibility of having the hour and a half as well as the short block class, because the hour and a half class allows students who want to accelerate, and there are many of them that do, to double up in math. So you could take algebra, for example, in the fall and geometry in the spring, which gets you that much closer to taking one of our 3 calculus courses by the time you're a junior, if you wanted to, and then do, so see what I'm saying? Like we want to be able to meet the needs of all of our kids in some way that's reasonable. Once again, it's helping inspire them and then supporting them where they're at. So yes, I agree. I'm hoping the same thing, that they're very successful.
Leon, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Or a comment?
What I like to know is that at the end, you know, this is great stuff. I mean, it's doing all the things I think we ought to be doing and mixing it to community and so forth. what I want to do is measure the success of it some kind of way and say that next year or the year after, we see all of these students. So I wanted everybody to hear, how are we going to actually know that we're being successful out here?
That's a
What metrics?
That's a great question, and I am asking those same kinds of questions. It's in my gut that this is good for kids. It works well with students. I can name like 5 students off the top of my head that this is working for today. But what does this mean for our students over the lifetime of this program? Does it make sense to keep doing all this? Is a lot of work. Do we keep doing it? So one of the things that I'm interested in doing is doing some sort of study. So to look at some specific data and say, does this have a positive impact on the things that we care about with kids? Does it keep kids in math classes longer? Does it encourage kids to take harder math classes? Does it help the students who are in math classes right now be more successful in the long run? So those are the kinds of things we're interested in. Thank you. It's a great question.
Great. You want, actually, what I'll do now, instead of having you wait, is I will just move the Common Core discussion right up, and you can introduce Marilyn, or you can do however you're going to do it.
Yep, this is Marilyn Woodard. She is the head teacher of our English Literature and Composition / English and Literature and Composition department. And Katie and Marilyn have been working really on Common Core with their departments for the last 3 years in preparation for the Common Core that's coming upon us. And we're going to start, Katie's going to give just a very quick overview of the Common Core, and then both Marilyn and Katie are going to give you some specific examples in their departments.
So, Vermont has joined the majority, an overwhelming majority of the 50 states in adopting the Common Core standards. They're going to replace the Vermont GEs in English Language Arts and Mathematics.
What are GEs?
Oh, Great Expectations. I'm so proud I know that.
I knew you knew that, but I didn't know if they...
Because of this, see? I'm going to read you just a statement that's from the Common Core description of what they're all about. The Common Core provides a clear and consistent understanding of what students need to know to be successful contributors in the 21st century global economy. So basically, it's raising the bar and helping kids be able to take what they're learning in school and know how to go about applying it out in the world. So it has some more meaning. It means that there will be new tests starting in 2015. They'll all be computer-based tests. And as Sue has said, the math and English departments have been working for about 3 years now on aligning our curriculum and helping the school make this transition. So Marilyn will talk a little bit about what that means in English, and then I'll say a little bit about what it means in math.
I see, or there are 3 specific changes that are coming with the Common Core standards. The first one, I think, is global, and it's that the standards that we currently have, the expectations are being ratcheted up at lower grade levels. So it appears that quite a bit of what we're expected to do, 9 and 10, 11 and 12, that's how the standards are broken up, the Common Core standards. Students are expected to be introduced to them, and in some cases master these ideas at a lower level, a lower grade level. So I think that's one big change that we've seen. In reading, the big change for us is that in high school, well, let me start. In the smaller grades, the testing material will pull the SBAC, the Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium test that Vermont is going to use to measure how well our students are doing with the Common Core standards. They're going to pull from 50% literature and 50% informational text. In grades 6 and 8, that balance shifts a little bit, and the testing material and reading will consist of 45% lit and 55% informational. But then in high school, it shifts quite a bit, and it's 30% literature and 70% informational. That's very different from our current Vermont standards that we have. So that's a big change. In the department, we have tweaked our core curriculum to meet this requirement. In writing, and this is the last big change that we see, is they're going to ask students to write argumentation 40% of the time, response to informational text 40% of the time, and narrative is going to drop down to 20%. We need to make sure our students understand the difference between persuasive writing and argumentation, because they have moved, the language has changed away from persuasive writing to argumentation. So there are some things that we can do to ensure that happens, that our students get that. And those are the three areas where we see big changes in the ELA.
Can you just touch on what the difference might be between persuasion and argument in terms of what they're expecting?
Yes, persuasion is what you use when you wish to gain power over someone. Argumentation is when you seek the truth. You don't want power, you want the truth. And for argumentation, our students really need to be introduced to Rogerian argumentation, which means as a writer, you have to assess your audience and you have to understand where the commonalities are. What do you have in common with your audience? And you point those out so you don't alienate your audience, and you can work and argue from commonalities. And it's a way to engage your audience a little bit more.
Could you give an example like the YouTube and how they want you to synthesize and all?
Another big difference, thank you. Another big difference with the writing, with the assessment, the SBAC, is students, it's all computerized, it's all computer driven, all of it. So that has great ramifications. Our students will sit in front of a computer and they will be given various pieces of information, an article, a primary source document, a video, a clip from YouTube, a poem. And they will be asked to read them, to analyze them, and to synthesize them. Our students currently are not asked to do that on the NECAP on our current state tests. They are asked to respond to informational and literary texts, but they're not asked to take several different documents, several different sources, and work them all together into their own synthesis. That's a huge difference for them. But the SBAC people have released sample questions, and what we are going to try to do in the next year or two is to get all of our 9th and 10th grade students in the computer labs and in front of these test questions, these sample test questions, so they become familiar with them. We've already started in the department changing how we ask kids to write, giving them 2 or 3 passages, 2 or 3 articles, documented sources, cartoons to look at and ask them to do a synthesis. We have begun.
It's a big shift.
It is a very big shift.
Tim?
I'm very curious as to how it's going to go. It is exciting, but it's scary too.
There's a lot of unknowns still, and actually I'll ask Frank to weigh in, because a lot of this, the testing part has to do with whether or not this SU as a whole has the capability, both bandwidth and technology, hard and software, to do this. And right now, the state is not requiring any student to get a certain mark, let's say, to graduate. So they're still not tied to, they're tied more to the school, once again, than they are to the students in the big picture of things.
And just as a comment on that, Katie and I, our departments are both going to be involved in piloting. That's going to involve technology. So, for the pilot that we're doing, the scores don't count.
This spring, we're both piloting.
Yeah, so it's just to get the kids and some of the kids in front of the computers, so our students see what it's like to be tested this way, and also so we can understand our infrastructure and where our strengths are and maybe our weaknesses.
Great.
Yes. Thank you for waiting.
I'm curious as to how you handle grammar and spelling and the rudiments of writing in this approach.
2 years ago, we took our grammar schedule and we looked at it, and we looked at the Common Core grammar schedule, and we realigned our grammar schedule to fit the Common Core schedule. For example, in sophomore year, I have to make sure that my kids have agreement, subject, verb, and pronoun antecedent agreement, because it's part of the standards. So we switched it up, but we aligned to that. Most of the teachers in the school use the Holt Reinhardt English Workshop program with their students.
Is part of their evaluation in the written work they do based anything on their use of correct grammar and
Yes, in
spelling?
the writing they will have specific questions about grammar, but grammar is not assessed in the reading, but it is in the writing.
So one of the questions that I think everyone might be thinking is, okay, so what's going to happen below the middle school and the high school, which I think we might, it's an SU question, but I think this board is probably very interested. I don't think that we can answer that now, but I think it might be something we want to take a look at, is what the big plan is.
Could I address that at least a little bit?
Of course.
So 3 years ago, there was a group of K through 12 educators, a group of English language arts educators, and a group of math educators that sat down to look at what the Common Core transition was going to look like. What are these new pieces of things we're supposed to do, and at what level? And out of that process that began 3 years ago, transition has already started to take place. So, for example, kindergarten and I believe first and second grade, but definitely first grade, have already transitioned in math into Common Core curriculum. So we're going to start seeing that trickle up. That doesn't mean we can sit around and wait, right? Oh, well, I'll just sit here with my lovely new bowl and I'll wait for those kindergartens to get to me. I'm not going anywhere. We have to start doing some sort of transition now. So yes, I would agree that something, yes, we need to be looking at this as a district, but it is being addressed as a district, for sure.
For instance, what a good example is algebra. We do have a group of students that come to us that have taken algebra, but it's maybe 40 kids, 50 kids, I don't know exactly, Tim. So now what is if they go by the Common Core, that expectation would be for all students coming in, right?
Right, that all students would have completed an Algebra 1 curriculum by the time they left 8th grade, completed and mastered. So, yeah. It's like, oh, really? Okay, sure, we'll do that tomorrow with my magic bowl and scarf. It wouldn't happen that way.
Tim, you got that? You got that pen?
You know where the ball is.
But once again, it's not, you put it really well earlier, it's a double-edged sword. So we have this opportunity to raise some standards yet again and start looking at all kids and how can we help all kids. And at the same time, we really need to be thinking about how do we help all kids starting at pretty early levels. So that's why the initiative to look at early childhood education is so important. And I'm really glad that we're taking that on as a district, for sure.
Go ahead, Leon.
Right, I was going to say, it's always good to see Renee here. We hadn't seen him in quite a while, so in terms of the English department before the board, but you do a good job for that coming out tonight. I wanted to say, I asked Frank before the meeting started about how we're set electronically in terms of technology to be able to manage these particular things, and I think you were hitting at saying you wanted him to comment. You know, if you want to comment how we want to do those, because it's a little different now that they're going to be doing all the things electronically, and we want to make sure we're ready. And I think you told me we were somewhat well in advance, but you can tell everybody where we stand.
Yeah, we're doing pretty well. We've been receiving information from the Smartest Balanced people for 6 or 8 months now, letting us know what it is that was going to be required of our school in order to be able to take the test. Now, one of the tricky things is that they kind of keep changing what it is that they think we're going to need, or what it is that they're going to want to support going out. But we're in really good shape as far as being able to have the students access the tests online, have it be secure, do the test. They're adaptive tests. That's one of the reasons that they're going to be a computerized test, is because as the student answers a question, they're not all going to be the same test for everybody, because if you answer a question that's a certain difficulty level and you get it wrong, then it's going to give you one follow-up question. If you do really well on it, it's going to give you a different follow-up question. So it's going to send you in a different direction. An advantage we have also with the SBAC testing over the NECAP testing is we have a much longer window. So it's a 3-month window within which to administer the tests. So, and this is to accommodate those school districts and school buildings that don't have much technology at all, so they could schedule the kids to come through the computer lab on some kind of a regular basis. And we have an awful lot of one-to-one programs already in place in a lot of the classrooms in the SVSU, so we don't need to really take advantage of that very much at all. We have plenty of broadband, and actually we're tripling it for next year, just as a matter of course. We have more computers coming in. We could always use more though, and I'll be putting that in next year's budget. But we're good to go right now. One of the things that people we need to really keep in mind is that in a couple years out, a couple years when we get into the SBAC testing, there's going to be 25% of the test is going to be done on a tablet. You have to input information with a stylus on a tablet. So we're going to need to really ramp up purchases of tablet devices instead of traditional laptop computers. So that's just something to keep in mind, but we got a couple of years to prepare for that.
The other thing is that the testing window is now in the spring and not in the fall, which
Yes.
I think is a marked improvement, that it's not after summer break and the beginning of the fall.
Just want to say thanks, Frank. I'll follow up with my second question if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I knew you were going to be on top of this. The second one is the perspective from the SVSU. And we're talking not just for you, Frank, but these things from the Common Core perspective. The answer to the question in terms of what level we're going to be starting and implementing this is not one that just be happening at Mount Anthony. That's a question that needs to come from the central office in terms of the curriculum area, in terms of the rectors saying pretty much what Frank is saying about the technology piece. I want to know from the curriculum piece what's going on and who's doing what along that particular line. And we can ask that kind of question because that's the kind of response that we need to know. We need to know that we're being supported all the levels right down through, and it needs to come from central office, SVSU.
And Tim?
Yeah, what type of response are we going to get from the people that are looking at these tests that these kids are taking, and how individualized are the reports going to be?
My understanding, the last communication that I read was we are going to see any student on an IEP, you can get that one student's report right away. Other than that, I really haven't heard anything, Tim. If it's a special ed student on an IEP, you can get those. You have to request them one at a time, or you have to print them out one at a time. But other than that, I think it's going to be an aggregate amount,
In terms of the results, have they given you any indication as to the type of information you're going to receive eventually on these kids that are coming through? If in math, for instance, would they tell us, for instance, that this person's skill in quadratic formulas was poor? I don't know what.
Yeah, I know. So if they're making recommendations or telling you exactly, right. I don't have an answer to that, Tim. But I'll keep my eyes open. I'll look and see if there is that information in my packet. But I haven't seen anything.
Part of what the hope is that there won't just be these tests that are given, but there'll be formative assessments along the way. So I'll be able to take my Algebra 1 students to the computer lab and do a couple of these questions in October, see how they're doing on quadratic formula usage or something like that. So the hope is, although I agree, we don't really know what the form of the data will be, the hope is that we won't be waiting until the end to find out how our kids are doing.
And again, these are only, we're only testing, or the assessments, excuse me, are only in 2 areas. We're not looking at science, we're not looking at cooperation, which of course they'd like to be able to test. There's been talk about having different students on different computers and putting a problem up there and having 4 or 5 students try and solve the, I know, I'm just telling you what's out there, because they're talking about cooperation and teamwork as an important skill of the going forward. So again, we're back in that we're testing 2 areas. So students, do you have any questions?
Well, this is supposed to replace both the kneecap and the MAP testing, correct?
No.
No, the map testing is a different scenario. You want to address that?
Sure. The MAP testing we use within our district. It's not something that's required by, we use it to monitor from grade level to grade level and beginning, middle, and end of courses. And it's used more internally rather than externally. So that would be data that I would use at the beginning of my geometry class to say, oh, these 3 people really never learned how to solve for X. I better make sure I address that before we get into having to solve something with something for X.
Progress monitoring rather than a one-shot deal.
Right, it's, more formative than summative.
Yes. That's why she has that bowl, and I don't.
I'll share. But yes, it is replacing the kneecap. And one other thing that I would just sort of want to put in there is that yes, it's just math and science or math and English that are being tested, but all the math is application math. So that involves science, understanding scientific principles. The reading in particular is other subject.
70% informational in high school, so that's social studies and science, tech.
And that's, interestingly, we just secured today a person that's going to come in at our March 15th in-service to work with our social studies and science teachers to talk about this exact thing and what these questions are going to look like. So, because every teacher should be moving the students forward. So we're starting that with science and social studies on March 15th.
And one of the things, I actually was in one of the rooms with Katie and a number of teachers trying to map out all the different where things were going to fall in different grade levels. But one of the very interesting things that I found is that they're going to be looking at varied texts much younger than what we do now. They're going to expect a lot more different kind of reading material, which will then end up in, a skill when they get to high school. Nathan, do you have any questions?
No.
Nelson? Rob?
I would just add to that at our professional day on March 15th, we are going to work on that. Several teachers will be working in their teams to work on Common Core and to develop the instructional lessons that they will need for students to meet the requirements. And at all grade levels, I'm very impressed with how far ahead we are in this school district, because it's pretty amazing. Even teachers come in and say how far ahead our curriculum is compared to a lot of other places. But at our last professional development day, which was for middle school and elementary teachers, they also were working on Common Core standards and the writing in the curriculum, so that they are practicing writing SBET questions, and how it really does change the teacher's reflection on how they present that information. It's a very big shift. So it's important that they do have professional development time to meet those goals for our students. It's really important.
Tim, I know there's a team at the middle school as well that have been involved right from the beginning.
Yep, and I can speak to the middle school's preparation for it as well.
Okay, do you want to? You don't have to get up.
So, originally I had Mary Ellen Breen, who is one of my associate principals, all set to present, and she had to excuse herself for a personal reason. So I will do my best to speak to this. As far as middle school preparations for the coming of the Common Core. There were several things taken during the 2011-2012 school year prior to my arrival here. Administrators attended a conference in Montpelier around the changes, as Marilyn talked about, the changes in writing and reading and what they're going to be expecting from students. Kathy Marcoux, through the central office, was able to facilitate a small group of teachers to be trained in writing lesson plans that would connect more directly to the Common Core. They were able to start training teachers last year, because now it is the expectation this year that when you submit your lesson plans that they directly connect to the Common Core, and that has been our expectation, and folks have been meeting that. Kathy Marcoux has also made several visits to faculty meetings during the course of the spring to talk about the changes and provide activities and units for teachers to start thinking about, all right, how's this going to change my teaching and what material I need to have for the classroom. As far as this year, one of the first activities I was able to participate in was to join a small group of teachers to go to the annual NELMS conference, which is a middle school conference presented by the New England League. And we got to see a presentation by a woman named Elisa Arndt, who works for Keys to Literacy, and she was very good, very dynamic. And we had a conversation with her at the conference, and she was able to come and talk to our faculty on one of the first days of school as a whole. And we were really clear with her that if you sit and lecture about best practice, we won't be able to guarantee your safety. And so she gave a 6-hour talk that went specifically to, here are a variety of activities you can use in all kinds of subjects that directly connect to the Common Core. As mentioned before, thinking about the question that you are asking kids to solve, whether it be in math, whether it be in science, whether it be in history or language, you know, how you phrase it is, it's going to be a change of mindset as far as the Common Core. They want kids to be thinking more, how it was explained to me, rather than finding the right answer, pick your answer and then defend why you got there. You have to explain your thinking to people. And so got very high praise from the faculty. They were most impressed. She was able to provide examples across the board. She did a very nice job. So much so that Kathy was able to work with us and bring her back in January when we had a professional development day. And teachers were able to be bunched together in subjects. And the goal was common units, common assessments, so that, you know, I may be taking English in Miss McGuire's room or Miss Leap's room, but it doesn't matter because at the end of the unit we'll take the same test so you can compare apples to apples as far as kids' progress. I know that for some folks that sounds really easy, like, well, yeah, teachers are doing that. Not necessarily. And putting on top of that you have the Common Core coming, it's a good time to have conversations with people about, all right, this is how I'm going to teach my unit on measurement in mathematics, or I'm going to teach, or what novel I read in the 8th grade. You have to start thinking about that they're moving more and more to different kinds of reading of material. So it's been a very good conversation. Just some things, I think going forward, some things for the board to consider, besides the fact that, you know, how or what the Common Core will measure will be different in ways. There's a presentation piece now in the Common Core, an expectation that kids will give presentations, and so you know, that will mean more instruction in classroom that has kids getting up and giving presentations. That's going to be a change for some. Trying to plan, some of the challenges are there aren't exemplars. There's not a lot of exemplars and rubrics about, you know, how you measure kids knowing this new material. The current NECAP has years and years of, this is what we expect for writing, this is what a 4 looks like, this is what a 3 looks like, this is what a 2. This is an exemplar of really good work, this is something that we think needs more work. There isn't that, and so what you have is teachers trying to develop units and lessons for a standard, but really not having a measure, which I think is common practice in a good classroom, where you would give kids a rubric before you got into it, but that's just a challenge. The middle school, we chose not to participate in the pilot. We were not chosen initially, but we did have the opportunity to volunteer. After looking at the request, it really was, as Frank talked about, a sense of, can your building support it? And we in the middle school have a one-to-one initiative already with netbooks. It's how we provide testing already for kids in the building. But the challenge for the middle school, and Frank and I have had conversations all school year about this, is that the netbooks are now 3, some years 4 years old, and trying to figure out what's the next device that you will be using or how you provide that access to kids in the building. That will be something that we have to talk about, because the SBAC does have an expectation that a screen will be this so much and stylus, and so you have to think about that as we are just doing the normal replacing of what we have in the building as far as technology. Also, the last thing I wanted to definitely say is that folks should not be under any illusion that this is a math and English only initiative. This was absolutely gospel at the conference last summer as I sat with my cohort from the middle school. It is the expectation of the Common Core that all teachers will be responsible for teaching reading and writing. That's how you get to 70% of informational text. That's how you get to kids reading and writing in a variety of different ways. It is not the responsibility of your English teachers and your math teachers. And I think administrators have been saying that for a number of years now, but I think we still have to have those conversations. I still hear it from folks that say, I teach blank, and I don't need to do that. That's the English teacher's responsibility, or the math department's going to fill in that piece, and that's just not the truth. Very clearly from the presentations that I've seen in the PD that we were talking about is it's everybody's responsibility to teach kids literacy. So I'll stop there.
So that's where we're headed in the next, well, the foundation has already been laid, or it's being worked on, so thank you both for coming. Frank, thank you for coming. And oh, by the way, Frank is one of the other national
board certified.
Thank you.
Yes.
Did it come with a scarf?
But they did a good job of providing, knowing what everybody's doing. I mean, I'm listening to the 3 people and then the 4th one, and everybody knows everybody's information and how it's affecting them, and that's very good.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
So we're going to go back up to the beginning of the agenda. We're going, the finance, number 3 on the agenda is finance, and does somebody want to make a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
So moved.
Second it.
All in favor of accepting the treasurer's report? It's unanimous. The next item is the budget status report. Rick is not here, but if you have any questions, you can email him. And the next item on the agenda is the budget. I wrote this on the agenda, budget highlights for the annual meeting. Now this evening, Tim, Ken, and
She stole the ball. Katie, what did you take?
Took the ball to it.
Took the ball.
Medal.
And I went to the select board meeting in Bennington, and we answered some questions, and Rick had some slides that were presented on big boards. And what would be nice is if we probably did that same presentation at the annual meeting. This report is available online, and Rick usually these are hard copies if you want them. If you don't want them, you can give it to a neighbor or a friend. So Tim or Ken, would you like to talk about the highlights that we went over at the select board meeting?
I don't think there was anything that we haven't heard before. Rick did a nice job with the aid of the some.
These color slides.
The color, oh yes, some color slides showing that basically our tuition, our general increase has been, I forgot what it is, 4% over the last 5 or 6 years, if you average it out. Two of the main factors that we have in the increased cost of supporting the schools, one is that we continue to have a higher number of special needs students that need to receive the support that the state requires, and we certainly want to be able to give them. The second is that our general population is dropping, and therefore our cost per student goes up, and therefore I'm not going to get into the details of it, but that has a direct effect on our taxes, what we have to pay. We also have two factors that are still to be determined by the legislature. One is what the base number will be for the amount of money that the state says that they think is a legitimate figure for the base figure on which our tax rate is based. In other words, they have a state base figure. And if you are above that, then the tax rate that you have to pay is the same percentage above that as what your rate is. So, but there are two bills in front of the legislature now. One deals with the state tax increase, which is presently anticipated to be 5%, and the other is the state anticipated base figure. Ken, do you have anything else on that?
No, I think that one of the graphs he did, I think for 7 or 8 years, showing the increase where Mount Anthony was either flat or went up very little. And I think, what did he say, 0.5% average?
0.75.
0.75 over the last 6, 7 years was the average increase. And our per pupil cost is lower than the state average for the high school, and it's the same with the Bennington School District and Powell. And all the districts here, except for one, we are below the per pupil cost.
So I'm just, you can take a look at this, I'll pass it around, but this was one of the.
I was looking
No,
for
it
it.
wasn't in there, it was a slide that Rick had made up for the meeting. So the annual meeting for Mount Anthony is at 6 o'clock at the firehouse. That's so you can go to your, if you're not from Bennington, you can get to Pownell or Woodford or wherever for the 6:30 or 7 meetings in your town. It is moderated by Joe Hall each year for your newcomers, and that's it, I think, for finance. So we'll move on to, Tim, is there anything else for finance?
Not that I know of, no.
So I'll move on to, is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions? If not, all in favor of the consent agenda? It's unanimous. So Tim and Sue, did you have anything you wanted to add to administrator reports?
Well, we still need to pass the resolution that Sue was interested in about being able to award the credits for.
Sure. Actually, you know what, I noticed committee reports isn't on here, but I made myself a note. So does somebody want to bring that motion forward from the Ed Committee? Richard? Richard, do you know what the motion is?
To accept, where'd you go? To accept Sue's request to have 4 CDC courses, the credit be changed from elective to a technology credit, and this expands opportunities for.
Okay, and do we have a list of those?
Yeah, she handed that out.
Yeah, there are 4 of them.
So, Griffin, you want to name the 4?
Sure. It is Art of Business Communications, New Business Ventures, Business Ownership, and Introduction to Sports and Entertainment Management. And there's a justification for each of these courses. Most of them are justified because they use an internet-based interface. You also have to be able to use technology to run businesses, and they go over that, Intuit technology, that type of thing.
And these are full credit courses as opposed to half credit courses?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Just wanted to make sure that these were courses that were brought to Mount Anthony from the CDC Center. Is that correct?
Yes.
And they were at the Ed Committee before this meeting.
Right, and I just wanted to make sure that these were the ones that.
Yeah, they're continuing to be taught by the CDC, but the students would be non-entity students that will receive that credit for the
Right.
technology.
Okay, thanks.
All in favor? It's unanimous. Tim, did you have something else, Tim Payne, for an administrative report?
No.
So then I'd like to go to committee reports and also what would be, under administrative reports, continued discussion on the MAU-MS configuration. So was there a resolution or some kind of recommendation that came out of the Ed Committee?
Yes, there's no resolution, but a recommendation moving forward. No one in the board was opposed, or no one who attended the meeting was opposed to bringing the 5th graders here. It was just logistically, we need to work it out first. There was interest in getting Rick's opinion on the budget, getting budget figures from what it took to get the 6th graders here, where it seemed to be comparable, so how much that would cost the BSD or the MAU district. Also, the middle school philosophy, making sure that the 5th and 6th grade would follow the middle school philosophy and would be more of a part of the MAU philosophy than the BSD policies and philosophy.
The teaming?
Yes. Also, there was a big question about how you would arrange the teaming, whether Tim warned against having that wing being a 5th, 6th grade or having them be kind of quarantined off again. He wanted them to be integrated. And so there came about a question about the best way to do that.
So I guess the question is, it sounds like the recommendation is that we're not opposed to it, but there needs to be some kind of planning if, in fact, the board is even asked to consider it. So Ken, I guess we're going to be in a holding pattern?
Yes, on Thursday night, so far I've talked with a few people, the options for our 5th graders, one of them is here. One is to put the addition on the school, one is to tuition the kids out, one is to rent space, and one is to increase class sizes. So we'll be discussing those next 2 Thursdays.
And we're talking about FY15. We're not talking about FY14 where the budgets are already in your, they're already warned. And so I think I was actually asked why this was on the the regular agenda and the Ed agenda, and I just felt that we, as a board, had not really discussed it, and I think there was some talk in the community about why this wasn't looked at, so I just wanted to make sure that the lines of communication were open. I heard, Nelson, did you share your idea at the Ed Committee?
Yes, I did. One of the things to do with where he talked about tuition. Now, my concern was that they were looking at changing the charter for here to 5th grade, and I thought that what should really be looked at is all the charters that are within the district and see about actually moving kids, almost having school choice to go to the lower K through
K5.
K5 type grades.
Or pre-K5.
And that was the other thing I talked about now where we're going to pre-K to 5th grade. Basically those schools are going to get more students. The possibility if they don't build on things, so there might be more of a initiative for people to move their 6th grades here.
So does this board need or feel like it needs to make some kind of a resolution or a motion, or just that we want to go on record as saying we're open to the idea?
I'll bring that back.
I think that's good enough. I don't think we
Okay,
need
so
it. If they wanna
is it an
approach us-
agreement that we're all open to the idea of looking at how to use this space, even if it means 5th grade or all the 6th grade? Yes, no?
That's a true statement, but I also made more emphasis on the fact that we need to make sure we integrate the 6 through 7 and 8.
That's a question I have. Is that something that's going to be looked at and started in September?
I think that's certainly up to Tim. I think we wanted we wanted to give the 6th grade more opportunities than they might have now.
Right.
And that's the scheduling and looking at things like, do they need actual library time versus, some other things. So I think maybe we'll hear back from Tim in a few months.
But you think that's a possibility starting in September?
I mean, that's what,
Maybe going to 6,
scheduling's
7,
the
8.
first scheduling is a first project right now. I mean, we're in the process of setting that up as we're talking right now. So that's a conversation I'd like to have with the 6th grade about their specific schedule and how it plugs in with the building right now. Because I would like to see a little more consistency across 6, 7, and 8. I think it would open more opportunities for 6th graders.
Right. There you go, my man.
So I think that that's the direction we're looking at, and you can give us some more concrete things as the year goes on. Which leads me to, I'm going to jump around. Under Chair's report, it says, discuss removing goal number 4. Last March, after the vote, we briefly discussed number 4, which is to bring all the SVSU 6th graders to the Mount Anthony Middle School. I guess the question is, do we want to think about just taking it off for now? Or do we want to leave it on there? And maybe that's a discussion for the next Ed committee along with some of the other topics. I know that it certainly was a goal. I mean, is it still a goal? Is that something we want to put out there still?
Go ahead.
Leon?
Well, I think we should take it off. I think we've achieved what we wanted to do and made everybody, make it known that this is what we wanted to. And then they made a statement and that they wasn't interesting. There's no need of keeping it on here. And so we're ready to move on to greener things.
Nelson?
Yeah, my comment would be just the opposite. I think what drives a lot of these things is of course, is cost. And I think we're seeing cost changes that are occurring through the system. Again, I bring up pre-K and a bunch of other stuff that's happening in the district. And when people vote for things, they're usually voting out of their pocketbook. And they're not voting because they think it's the right thing to do with bringing their 6th grade here. I think the majority of people, if they were asked, would say yes, they'd love to have their 6th grade here. They have the opportunity to have labs that they don't have in their schools and other things. But the real thing comes down to how do we justify as a total district expenses? Because when you look at this slip that was just passed around that showed the chart, and you can see the varying difference between all the districts.
This side of the table didn't see it yet.
The varying districts, Tim's keeping
sitting on it.
But basically, you know, if there was a way that we could equalize that out, it certainly would be a lot more palatable to all the districts than to look at how they would put their children into the 6th grade to here. And I think that, I don't know how we address that, but I think that's one of the big problems with the way we have statewide property tax and the way the formula's done. It's just that if you're in a district like we are, and as large, there needs to be a way to flatten that out somehow.
Just the news.
Well, I guess I'm not going to ask for any rash decisions at the moment, so.
We just can't control it. I mean, I hear what we're saying. We can't control that.
I think really it was our intent as a board, and, you know, people change, board makeups change, and I think in designing this building, that was the hope back 10, 12 years ago. We did ask the question, and we got, you know, some of the answers that we were looking for, but again, cost does drive a lot of it, and if preschool students are at an ADM of a 0.4 and the numbers start to come up and some of the preschools are actually housed at the schools, you may see a shift in people's thinking. So I guess, is it the consensus maybe to leave it there for now? Dave? Griffin?
Yes, I'm good with that. We scheduled another education committee meeting before the MAU meeting on the 20th.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay.
But just want to say, if we leave it, that means we should be taking some action somewhere. That's the only thing I'm saying. We got it on here as the board goal to do this, and we can't just let it sit and we do nothing.
But I think we are taking action in that if we really enhance the 6th grade program here and give these youngsters from Bennington this tremendous opportunity to advance with math and take art and ceramics and stuff like that, I think we're going to be pushing some of the parents in Pownell, Shasbury, and maybe even North Bennington to send their kids over to here. And I think that's in direct push by making this such an attractive program.
But that's a different goal. I mean, we're saying bringing SVSU 6th graders to the Mount Anthony Middle School, And we're still trying to convince, but if we want to span on and change it for the time being, I would be happy if we were to talk about the integration of the 6th and 7th and 8th graders at the middle school, the enhancement of that in terms of that as a goal. And the outcome of that would be that we would have people knocking at the door to get us to take the kids in at that level would be something else. But right now, we're talking about trying to see how we can integrate and enhance what we have. And so that it doesn't fit under that goal. I don't think it fits.
So I actually am hearing both sides, which it sounds like we could have a discussion maybe at the next Ed committee about how we could change this goal to integrate the 6th grade into a true middle school, or to have the building represent true middle school teaming 6-8 or something like that. But we won't, I mean, I definitely hear both sides, and I do think that, you know, it depends on how you look at it. If you're right, Leon, if it's a goal, then maybe we need to go out there and do something about it. But I guess we could take different measures to do that, so.
I think the goal is also only have one goal, either acquiring the BSD 5th graders or the other 6th graders. I don't think we can house both groups at the middle school.
No.
So I think that needs to be decided too at the next Ed committee meeting, which direction we're going to go in.
Okay. So I'm going to move on to the student rep report. Would you like to do it together, or do you have one?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to talk about sports?
Yeah, so the winter sports are just winding up right now. A lot of teams have had their senior nights here. A lot of I think the ski team has their state meet tomorrow.
3 o'clock Prospect, if any of you would like to attend. It's home, so it's good.
Yeah, it's a
and
home
I'd love
meet.
to have some
And they have
fans.
snow, Dave?
It's not 3 o'clock, though.
I think it's
9 to
earlier.
3.
It's 9 to 3.
9 to 3. So you can show up. All right,
Show up
9
at 3, but
3
we won't
o'clock
see
the award
much.
ceremony if you want to catch the tail end.
Dave, will you be there representing us?
Yes, I will be.
Good.
And so we've had the track team just had their state meet a couple weeks ago. The wrestling team just had 25 in a row yesterday, or very recently. So winter sports are winding up. They're doing pretty well, and we've got, I think, end of March our spring sports starting. So yeah.
And when did the semester start?
The semester started at the end of January.
28.
28th, yeah.
So it's really just a couple weeks in.
Yeah, 4 weeks in.
Ken?
And as usual, the swim team has been forgotten, but the boys won their first ever championship of the league, and the girls have won their 7th out of the last 9.
Very good.
And one of the girls, Heather Foley, was named the MVP of the league last night at the banquet.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Which is pretty hard to get when you're from Vermont and to be in the Berkshire League.
Also coming up at the high school, we have the Student Senate's annual dodgeball tournament, which is for all students. It's on March 12th and March 14th after school. So if anyone's interested in attending, it's kind of fun to see everyone go after each other. Usually about 16 teams participate, 6 kids on a team, so you usually have near 100 students participate from around the school, and a good mixture of all students. So we also have a couple of teacher teams that kind of tend to show their might. So it's a lot of fun, though.
I bet Mr. Morrison's in there.
Mr. Upright.
Oh.
Can you tell us a little bit about the play that's coming up? I noticed on the site.
Oh, yeah.
Much Ado About Nothing is coming up this week. It is Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, there's an evening performance, and then on Saturday there's a matinee as well. So if you're interested in getting tickets, they're selling fast. So I called the high school and talked with Christina Gabris, and she'll set you up. I think there was just one thing. This was discussed in the education committee meeting, but the state council on bullying and harassment, one of the committees of that council is a student leadership committee. And I'm sorry for those of you who've already listened to my spiel about it. But what the student leadership committee next year would like to do is put on a student leadership bullying and harassment seminar or conference, 1 or 2 days, which is kind of similar to other student leadership conferences around the state. The students would go to
and listen to presenters talk with other students, kind of gain some new techniques of dealing with bullying in their own towns, in their own communities. And so that was just one of the things we wanted to bring to all of the school boards and administrators around the state was any suggestions that you may have for what kind of skills we could be instilling at these meetings. And so at the meeting, Sue brought up bringing a diverse range, not just AP or honors level students, bringing all levels to the committee. And also getting charismatic students that were really leaders. And one of the focuses that was brought up was really understanding the impact that bullying has on students and being sympathetic and empathetic.
Did you see the, I recently got an email from, I think it was the task force that you're on statewide that did a YouTube video?
We didn't put it on, it was a student put it on from upstate. We didn't.
It was, did you see it?
Yes, I did see it.
It's, I mean, I think we could probably post it on one of our websites. It was Frank Gahn, but I think that your team is doing really good work, and I'm sure you mentioned this earlier, that Griffin is on that statewide task force. So, thank you for doing that. Great. Where are we? Policies, none. Superintendent's report.
Yeah, we got the meeting Wednesday, 4:30 policy meeting.
And the policy on policy is on it.
And
Is it again?
Is it?
We got about 7 things on it. I don't remember which one is on
Okay.
top, but it should be on there.
All right.
I left that at home. I mean, if you want to know, I can
Do
tell
you
you.
want it, does that because you're retired now? You're not, you gotta
Don't spread
keep your
it out.
time?
I haven't had a chance to look at anything. I've been celebrating.
That
so-
was tough.
It was.
All right, we'll turn it over to Donna then.
Okay, okay. I just wanted to report on a meeting we had last month of the Superintendent's Advisory Group on Public Relations, and Dave was there, and Larry Johnson, and several community members that are really committed to trying to help us improve our image of the school district and to showcase all of the great things that are happening here. And so I think that the people there were just so strongly committed to what we're trying to do, and just to try to clarify and articulate the vision and the image that we have in our school district, and like the things we heard tonight about the fantastic work that our teachers are doing and that our principals are doing in their buildings to really make it the best it can be for our students. So we did highlight some of the short-term goals that we're working on. We are developing a brochure with Laura Boudreau and Barbara Ackerman are working on just a couple trifold brochures to have available at businesses and real estate offices. We're trying to help Dawson notice all of the wonderful things we're doing so that he does really positive articles about our school and all of our school districts. And we gave some information to the Penny Saver to really put out some really positive press about questions that are asked in the community about our schools. It had been, I think it must have been 10 years old, but we really upgraded it so that it was very much more positive in spreading the word about our schools. We also are going to be working with some ambassadors that have offered to make some short videos. I think, Mike, you were going to work with some of those people on filming just some short clips of parents of former students that have had really wonderful experiences in our schools and the great futures that they have had. And also working with Kevin Robinson from Southwest Vermont Medical Center, who is in charge of their image for the hospital and trying to really look at how are we developing a healthier community. So he really is very dedicated to helping us join with them in how does education play a role in our community's health, which is a very important factor. And he has been he's so very clear about developing communication, which is where he is helping us. And he said that we really need a vision. We need to build some goals for communication. Who is our audience? What do we want them to believe? What is it that they do believe? And what is the best way to get the message out to the audience that we want to target about the great work that we're doing? So we have been collaborating with him, looking at how can we assess some of those factors in the community and come up with some data that really will help us focus our efforts. So we're not just trying to do everything everywhere, but really looking at what will work. Go back to that again. Now, where's the data, what works? And so he's been extremely helpful in helping us to organize that. So we're also going to have a presentation Wednesday night at the SVSU meeting on what are we doing, what are some of the things that we're working on. Tim and Sue have been working with our coach, Maura Hart, on how are we making our schools more effective, what are our action steps and the things we are working on. So I think that will be a really good starting point for looking at what works and what do we want to work better and how are we going to get there, what are the things that we are doing for improvement. So
awesome.
That's the big news.
Great.
Okay.
Leon?
Well, while you was waiting, I just wondered if that's the end of it. Donna, I pulled up the agenda because I didn't want to say what was on here without making sure I did them, every one of them. And that's the good thing about electronics and so forth along this line. That was a big push in how we set up these boards to do this stuff. Well, the policy meeting is at 4:30 Wednesday. And we got policy 1000 is the first item, and then bullying prevention is the second item we got on there. And those are things that we talked about here. And we also are going to be talking about the opportunities to include the statements for the purchasing of equipment that we had talked about here in terms of taking classes and whether equipment belongs to the district or such and such a thing. So there's some things that we'll be doing out there. Something that's going to affect this board again is optimum class size policy is up for review in terms of some of the things that I mentioned before, the maximum and minimum requirements, and then we're just tracking and reviewing.
Great,
So,
thank you. Are you going to try and get there or send your notes for the policy on
you don't
bullying?
have to. No, they don't.
I can send notes,
Yeah.
and as one of the things, well, Leon and I can touch base on this, but one of the things that the council isn't trying to do is not trying to dictate policy within the school boards, they're just trying to provide assistance.
Right. Yeah, I understand.
But your input is welcome.
Yeah.
So we do need an executive session this evening, but I also want to say, since committee reports were not on here, I just wanted to ask Nathan if the Ag Committee met last month, right?
Yes, the Ag Land Committee, and those notes are on the internet. You can access those, and assumably we'll have another meeting on the 6th of March. And we are going to attempt to be more inclusive, I guess, have the Career Development Center a part of this operation. And apparently there's other entities in the community that perhaps should be part of the whole decision-making process. So after assumably having $15,000 added to the budget, which is really minimal when you consider the scope and breadth of this operation.
Yeah.
We should be able to, we'll have to decide where that money's going to go and how we can use it most effectively.
Is that right? Great. Thank you. So, yes, those minutes are on there, and those meetings are warned, and everybody is sent a copy. So, if we, can I have a motion to go into executive session?
Can I just?
I'm sorry.
I just passed out the latest messenger. It's inside the Bennington banner on February, whatever it says. But I thought maybe you'd like to see a copy of it if you'd like.
I got it already.
We'd love to get
Written by students.
Yeah.
This is great. Thank you for bringing that to. So, a motion to
So
go to
moved.
executive session for personnel.
So moved.
Second.
We're gonna, Tim, can you just make sure when you walk down there that the conference room is open?
I can absolutely believe that.
We won't come back here? Okay, so we need to shut down.